right.
This is pretty flat.
Oh, could be, yeah. I didn't walk down over there, but yeah, I wonder if
It must be.
Hey, everyone, we're going to call the meeting to order. The Moorhead City Council meeting June 24th, 2019. It is approximately 5:30 p.m. here in City Hall. Madam Clerk, will you please make a roll call?
Shelley Dahlquist. Present. Sarah Watson Curry. Here. Shelley Carlson.
Here.
Heidi Duran.
Here.
Joel Paulson.
Here.
Deb White. Here. Steve Gertz.
Here.
Chuck Hendrickson.
Here.
Mayor Judd.
Here. If we may, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Before we move into the agenda, I'll remind everyone that if anyone wishes to address the council during this meeting this evening, please fill out the yellow forms that are found out in the entryway in the hall, and please bring it to the clerk, and we will call you up when we get to the item. When we get to the item, citizens addressing the council, please remind that this item is only for citizens to address items that are not on the agenda. And also just to remind everyone that you have 3 minutes to address the council. If the council wishes to respond accordingly, that is not a time for a rebuttal. This will be a time only for the council to respond. And if you wish to have any further responses, please feel free to either call or email City Hall and we'll get back to you. Then moving on, are there any amendments to the agenda? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 4, consent agenda.
I would move approval.
Second.
Motion made to approve the consent agenda has been made by Councilmember Duran, seconded by Councilmember Watson Curry. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll move on to item number 5, recognition presentations. Item 5A, Cass County Vector Control Informational Briefing by Mr. Steve Moore.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I have Ben Prather here. He's the Director of the Cass County Vector Control Office out of Fargo, and he'll be giving some information on our mosquito control program. Just wanted to give a quick history. Since 2015, we've been partnering with Cass County Vector Control. In 15, they did our counts and testing. 16, we started a full agreement where they provided not only surveillance and services, but also the application services. Prior to that, we were doing it with seasonal employees, and so we wanted to bring in the expertise in Cass County. So they've been doing our adult and larvicide applications for several years, and we are in our second year of a 3-year contract with Cass County Vector Control. With that, I'll turn it over to Ben. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of the council, I guess I'm here mostly for Q&A, but we can kick off with some starting points. I think probably the main concern and maybe the biggest questions that we get are, when are you spraying? What are we doing to, one, control the mosquito population, and what is that doing to, affect our environment, particularly when we are looking at large-scale adult mosquito control campaigns that at times are necessary. But first, I'd like to kind of highlight some points that Mr. Moore made regarding our operations and some of the things that are ongoing when you don't see the aircraft overhead or the trucks in the streets in the city of Moorhead and the surrounding communities. And that, of course, is our major emphasis on larval control or killing mosquitoes in standing water, which is requisite for their life cycle. So starting as early as the end of April in some seasons, this year it was more like the middle of May, unfortunately, with the weather. We were out looking at snowmelt pools and rainwater like we saw this afternoon that accumulates and provides that ideal habitat for mosquito breeding to to occur. And in those areas, we're using primarily organic bacterial-based insecticides that are actually, in fact, organically certified to try and eliminate those mosquitoes in those sites before they even emerge off the water and cause both nuisance and, potentially life-threatening illnesses. As we've all heard, the stories of West Nile virus in this region can be quite catastrophic, and we really look at two sides of the coin, both from a perspective of nuisance, of just comfort. Are we able to be outside and enjoy our communities, our gardens, our backyards, but also ever-present threat of potential life-altering illnesses. Beyond the larval control programs, we do know, certainly within different constraints, that adult mosquito control is an absolute necessity, and sometimes both for just to maintain the quality of life that we'd expect and to minimize the amount of mosquitoes in the environment, but also as a response to specific disease concerns, disease threats, whether we know we have active West Nile transmission occurring from mosquitoes to humans. We make responses that go outside of that nuisance level of spray. This most recent application was purely for the sake of those nuisance type mosquitoes. I think a lot of folks across the region, when those 90-degree days hit at the early part of the month, definitely started seeing some major challenges with utilizing the outdoors and not getting swarmed by mosquitoes on their patios. And we, during that period, saw a very dramatic rise in our overall surveillance. We have 5 traps in the city of Moorhead, and the state of Minnesota actually requires that we observe a threshold for nuisance, and we exceeded that many times over in some areas. And in fact, the trap in the Concordia neighborhood saw its 3rd highest in our history of female mosquitoes collected. So certainly one of those times where, from my position, looking at a metro-wide surveillance, looking at numbers that were typical of mid-July rather than early June, it was certainly, I think, worth the effort to go out and try and alleviate some of that nuisance level, full well knowing that there is always environmental consequences. So that, I guess we can open up to questions.
Councilmember Gertz.
There are 2 primary applications that the general public see is as aerial spraying. Of course, you think you're in the middle of a bomber flight, when the plane comes flying over. And then the other one is a truck-mounted one?
Yes, sir.
And so how effective is the truck-mounted one? Do they drive up and down every street and avenue? And, how effective is that? It doesn't appear like it would be, being that it's just sitting in the back of a truck.
Well, that particular application has similar effect versus what aerial. And to answer your first question, we're not applying both streets and avenues. We typically apply perpendicular to the wind. So say in a situation where we'd have a north wind, we would be moving east and west across avenues and letting that product drift downwind. So the machines are calibrated to have an effective range of at least 300 feet from the nozzle. And I'll remind you that the particles that come out of the back of that nozzle, although it looks like a rather dense cloud once it's coming off the truck, the particle size is typically under 20 microns. So we're talking about fractions of the width of a human hair, typically about the size of a cell, so of a typical mammalian cell. So what happens is as that product drifts away from the nozzle, it travels upwards of 300 feet downrange and actually impinges or goes and rests onto the mosquitoes as they're in flight. And it's the same process that you see with the aerial applications, except that's more of a top-down type spray. And in fact, those particles are slightly heavier so that they can get to the ground. But in terms of which is more effective, certainly there are scenarios for both that seem to be, that play to the advantage. For instance, when nights like tonight, if we were out spraying these pop-up thunderstorms, it's probably better to look at maybe a truck fogging application, given that aircraft and lightning don't really mix all that well. But ultimately, it gives us the opportunity to control areas and kind of move around the storms as they approach, and light up 30 different sprayers across the community all at once, as opposed to relying just on 2 points, which are the 2 aircraft that we're utilizing in these past 2 seasons. Other type scenarios benefit the aircraft. Specifically, we really rely heavily in the fall seasons on the aircraft, given that the window of opportunity to get those mosquitoes in flight. So the key thing here is they need to be moving. We can't be applying this product at rest and expect to get a good knockdown. But in those fall conditions, when you see, daytime highs maybe into the 70s, but by 10 o'clock we're approaching 50s, lower 60-degree weather. That really narrows that envelope of time where we really have a good effectiveness with our truck-mounted sprayers. So that's an instance that we rely heavily on those aircraft to try and make those Friday night football games at least as reasonably comfortable as possible. And again, that is also towards the tail end of our West Nile season, is in that September, mid-September range. You can still see human infections occurring throughout that period.
And then just one other question. If you're in the backyard playing with your kids and you're not aware that it's going to be a aerial application or even a truck application, and I think I know the answer to the question, but just for the general public, I'll ask it. Is there a health risk in the event that you are playing outside and then this sprayer goes by?
There's certainly no documented reactions or negative health effects that we've seen with any people in our area that have been reported to the authorities that would invest that kind of thing. These types of products are that we're utilizing actually have a wide variety of uses from both agriculture and in fact actual medicine. So children who are treated for head lice are getting applications of the active ingredient that we're applying via the truck mounted sprayers and the aircraft. So we looked it up, and infants as young as 2 months of age can receive head lice treatments. That is essentially the equivalent of what we would spray over an entire yard in one night. Certainly we always try and allow folks who are, within the spray zone, if they would like to step inside, we tell our trucks to, maybe pull over on the side of the road, and if someone's trying to scurry indoors, let them do so. But the primary mode of any sort of ingestion of the pesticide permethrin is primarily through your food, your leafy vegetables, think like squashes and berries and peppers and things of those nature. If you're not buying organic, you're typically, that film on there is primarily a pyrethroid or a permethrin type products that you see, again, on head lice treatments, flea and tick treatments for dogs and animals, and in a variety of different medicinal applications.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Hendrickson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I got 2 questions for you. First one, I don't know if you know the answer. Are the mosquitoes bigger this year?
Yeah, there's a certain species that we've seen higher numbers of than compared to maybe other seasons, and really it was the rapid cold to hot kind of transition that I think really saw a relatively large uptick of all the varieties that we had. But specifically, there is a species out there that's Culiceta internata that is rather healthy looking, typically not very human aggressive. Specifically, I see them a lot in my car in the morning, and they're just trying to get out. They really are primary feeding upon deer and cows and things like that. The Canadians call them the big buffalo mosquito because they kind of swarm in flocks around there, and given our history, that makes sense. You do rarely see those land and bite on people, so we kind of discount them towards our threshold at times, and that was something that we in fact did for the early stages of the pre-application with the aerial application that took place just a few weeks ago.
Okay, thank you very much. And the second question, there hasn't been a case of West Nile reported this year, has it?
Not this year, no. Typically, those cases start occurring, within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Typically, seasons where we see high amounts of human infections, we start seeing indications in the first week of July. So certainly now is the time to make those preparations, make sure you have that bug spray available, and if you're getting bitten up by mosquitoes, maybe making a pesticide application to your own yard, or moving indoors for the evening, because typically we haven't seen anything that should be alarming at this stage. But with the temperature profile that we're expecting, when you see those 80s and 90 degrees consistently, that really amplifies the virus amplification, and of course helps the mosquitoes out greatly too. So
Has it been trending in the Fargo-Moorhead area? Has it been trending down or up, or is it?
It's really on approximately like a 3 or 4 year cycle. We have been on the upswing over the past few years. I think the most recent case count for Clay County was, I think it was 4 last year, and then it was 7 the year before, and then 4 the year prior to that. And it kind of goes into a nice bell curve. And there are a few years where we have no cases, both in Clay County and in Cass County. Those are years where we kind of get to maybe take it a little easy on dealing with those West Nile concerns, but still remaining vigilant and maybe not having to do as many aerial applications or ground fogging in response to that. So to date, there are none that I'm aware of, and we're looking at traps closely and seeing when those corrections might need to occur.
Thanks for being here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilmember White.
I have 3 questions. So my first question, I know that you can sign up for alerts, but my understanding is Cass County Vector has stopped sending out media alerts, and so I'm wondering if that is something they would consider going back to, because not everybody may be signed up to get the notifications, and so just contacting the local media and having it
Yeah.
out there so that, more people would know about
Yeah,
it.
and that is something that was brought to my attention. KFGO was a little caught off guard most recently about the aerial application. And in the past, I think we had sent out faxes actually up until like 2017 or so. And then we recently, with social media platforms, and then we were able to get a fairly good notification system with our website that sent out notification to anybody who would want to sign up, and media was included in that. And I think it might have maybe just got lost in the shuffle, or was just an omission of mine that we made a mistake there. But certainly, publicly, we're going out and trying to do the best we can. But certainly, we could recognize that there may be some faults there that would maybe a simple fax might fix.
And then my second question, and Steve might be a better person to answer this too. You mentioned the area around Concordia, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I've noticed this from talking to residents, that there are certain pockets that are particularly bad. And so one of the areas I remember from walking through that neighborhood is just south of Woodlawn near Concordia. And I'm wondering what we've been doing in terms of remediation. If we have data that shows that some areas are particularly bad, are we looking at how we might work at rectifying that? So looking at drainage in certain areas and things that would then, where we wouldn't necessarily just be relying on pesticides.
Yeah, and absolutely. That area has been a bit of a challenge for the last, year or two, specifically. The trap is actually housed like right in Concordia. And we've sent teams of, half a dozen inspectors going literally door to door to go and try and find the habitat that we're seeing. So certainly our surveillance is indicating heightened numbers of a variety of mosquitoes that are indicating to us that we're looking for a somewhat permanent water site. We're looking for something that does temporarily flood out and is providing a handful of different habitats that are out there. So we're still kind of unraveling it, and we do have our maps and things online, and I definitely encourage the folks, and maybe we can get it online here for you guys, one of these at some point here, to look at those maps and review. If you have standing water in your property or in your backyard and it's not documented or shaded in on our maps, that is something that we would like to know about, and be able to provide that service to come in and apply those larvicides, so that we're not reliant on the adult control aspects of it, or other mechanical remediation if there's drainage issues or things like that. Those are typically fairly expensive processes. But certainly, there are alternatives. It's just that to find that one location that is producing a number of things has been a challenge, and we're continuing to try and look into that and resolve specifically that issue, because it's very strange. It's right in the middle of town. It seems to be trending higher and higher for some reason, and there's just no reason for it. So
I know the residents have noted it, and there's an old stream bed in that area, but it doesn't seem to be that there's standing water in that. So.
Yeah, we're seeing floodwater mosquitoes. We're seeing standing water mosquitoes. There's lots of things that are intriguing, I guess maybe is the right way to put it. But certainly work to be done, and to try and get in and do some better service in that area is a priority for us.
My last question, then I'll turn it over, is could you talk a little bit about what impact the pesticides have on other insects, particularly pollinators?
Yeah, sure. So the larval control program is actually very pollinator friendly. So the bacterial pesticide we're relying on is a BT. Many folks in this room might have heard of BTK. BTK is used in organic farms and things like that, sprayed on organic crops. We're using a subspecies related to that that's called BTI that is only ingested by, or it's ingested by lots of things, but it's only activated inside a certain type of chemistry that is found only in mosquitoes, midges, and biting gnats. And we know that because all of those insects have an alkaline or basic gastrointestinal tract, right? So other mammals, fish, insects all rely on acidic pH within their GI tract, whereas when this particular protein is ingested, it conformationally changes, so it basically opens up and then becomes toxic and then has downstream effects with specific receptors that are only found in those types of organisms. So very low toxicity to all non-targets. That is again, our primary focus in what, we put out something like 1,800 pounds of this BTI just today in response to the rains of last week. The other concerns, certainly I think the larger concern would be with the adult control products, and certainly there's a lot of cultural and things that we try to do to mitigate those non-target effects. However, given the nature of them, the pesticides being broad spectrum, there's no way that I can stand here today and say that there's no non-target effects. That is certainly something that we're fully aware of, and something that we, as trying to be responsible citizens, know can cause some problems. We don't want pollinators to be gone and food webs to be agitated. But certainly, I think given the two parameters of a well-established threshold of nuisance level conditions that people are willing to tolerate up to a point, and then again, human health do have to take some precedent in that discussion as well. So certainly those elements we rely heavily on is saying, do we have the justification to do this? Are we spraying for a good indication of both human illness or these nuisance level conditions that we most recently experienced back on the 10th?
Thank you.
Councilmember Durand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. People who know me know that I have questioned our mosquito control over the years, and I don't like our current reliance on chemicals. I tend to side with the individuals in our community that believe it should be their choice if they want to be sprayed upon, and that it's an individual's responsibility. I wish we were doing more to control mosquitoes in other ways, other natural ways, such as, what animals are mosquito-eating animals. Can we include more of them in our community? Can we plant more plants and vegetation that are mosquito repellent? Those would be two big questions that I have. Because as you said yourself, we don't know for sure that we're not disrupting pollinators with certain chemicals. We can't say that without a doubt. I know that there are cities that don't aerial spray, that are along rivers, that have large bodies of water, and Minneapolis being one. I wish we would take a look at some better practices other than especially permethrin. We know that the use of that does have impacts, it does have consequences that go above and beyond human health. It could impact our entire food chain. So I'm glad we're in our second year of this third-year contract, so that when year 3 is up, we can look at other ways, other things. And I hope that we don't wait and do that next year. I hope that we do some of that sooner rather than later.
And I appreciate your concerns, and certainly as a biologist, I always kind of joke that what I do as a career is an antithesis of biology, where I'm out actually eliminating organisms from the environment. But certainly our goal is to never completely take out every mosquito that's out there. That's why we observe these thresholds. That's why we are doing some of the best surveillance, I would say, in North America to identify what are the problem mosquitoes, what are the pathogen-carrying mosquitoes, and responding as necessary. And to your other points, I certainly welcome, any sort of, additional dialogue into alternatives. It's just at times, some of those things go beyond the scope of my office and of course, Mr. Moore, even in terms of, the cost of alleviating drainage across large areas can be rather extensive. Sometimes that can damage the habitat more than, potentially applying these granular insecticides and so forth. And lastly, yes, there are organisms that are capable of eating mosquitoes. However, most of those types of organisms are predatory. They're going to go out and eat whatever they can find the most abundance of. And certainly, there are other larger, more calorie-dense meals for bats and dragonflies and things for them to go. And that has been shown in numerous research papers that those types of biocontrols are just overwhelmed by just the sheer bulk of the quantity of mosquitoes that come out all at once. And reliant upon those types of ideals would have already had found equilibrium in nature had that been possible. The other challenges when you're talking about biological control certainly gets to be some cost association things. I know in other parts of the country they rely to some level on mosquito eating fish. Either there's a guppy that is called the mosquito fish that they use in more temperate climate, a little warmer down in California and other areas. But again, those are minnow stocking programs that even at our level, I don't feel that we have the capacity to maintain that would be economical and something that taxpayers would be interested in funding in there. Other alternatives, really have some challenges in terms of increasing, say, trying to provide more habitat for dragonflies or things of that nature, given that they're so non-selective and that they're, primarily going after larger, like I mentioned, caloric kinds of meals for those. So certainly something that, weighs heavily on us every time. We know there are people that absolutely despise what we do. But there are absolute certain times that I think there are more people cheering on that they can use their yards and that they have a level of protection that we can offer the best to our ability.
Councilmember Dahlquist.
I just have one big question, but I did notice before the spray, we had a lot of dragonflies in the neighborhood. And then the next day they were gone, and I found one, a dead on my yard. So I do know that they do affect, or it seems as if, and they have a very symbiotic, they grow together. I mean, the larvae eat the other larvae and whatever. So I did notice that the dragonflies disappeared also after the spray. But the only question I have is it possible to not spray Moorhead? I mean, I know we have the contract, but would it be possible? I'm just saying, what if?
Absolutely. I would say that would be a decision that I believe Mr. Moore would maybe be best to speak to.
That's always the decision, but it's one I'm not willing to make because we've spent a lot of time, energy, and effort working together in the Fargo-Moorhead area as a team to maximize the effectiveness of aerial spraying by doing the entire area. 5 years ago, West Fargo would do it, and then Fargo would do it, then we would do it, then Oakport would do it, and really, combat ineffective. So just a short answer, I will not be a proponent, and I will not give a no vote unless directed to do so, to not spray Moorhead.
Any other questions for Mr. Prather? Am I pronouncing your name correctly, sir? Is it Prather?
It's Prather, but
Prather,
you're
okay.
close enough. Thank you.
Sorry about that. I want to make sure I get people's names right, so Prather. Councilmember Watson Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in light of the comment of working together as a metro, are you presenting or communicating to our our neighbors in the metro as well? It's really informative to understand this process more
Yes,
clearly.
yeah, absolutely. So I am an employee of Cass County government, but we do work under contract, just very similar to what you have at the city of Moorhead here with the cities of Fargo, West Fargo, the city of Horace. It just added on an additional layer of larval control to their contract, and that's something that I guess in the future that we would definitely like to look at. I know Mr. Moore attended our board meeting here at the middle part of May, was to seeing whether Minnesota Department of Agriculture would be interested in allowing us to maybe expand our larval control footprint so that we were less reliant maybe on some ground fogging and aerial spraying as we look further east into Clay County outside of your territorial limits. But as of this moment, we were given a hard no, and also budgetary constraints. We're working to try and not overspend given the capacity. We could go nuts and things would get off the rails real fast. So, but certainly collaboration has been key. Growing up here as a kid in the 90s, I remember 2 or 3 nights a week seeing the mosquito trucks driving down the road, and 10 minutes later the mosquitoes were just right back on you, and just being biblical, as we've all experienced, I think, in maybe recent weeks, unfortunately. But certainly having a multi-pronged approach that is very vast geographically has really turned the tide. Going through historical records, if you, just for your consideration, we used to only do truck spraying and aerial spraying when we saw a threshold of 100 mosquitoes per trap per night. We used to have a daily piece in the newspaper that was the mosquito meter, and it ranked 1 through 5, and each number represented 100 mosquitoes per trap per night. We're regularly now, with our larval control program, not only reducing our reliance on the adult control aspects, but seeing those numbers remain in the teens and 20s. Even, despite the outbreaks in the Concordia areas that spiked to 300 and 400, we're able to make those interventions and bring those numbers back under control using, again, a large geographical view of the problem, and responding as we feel accordingly, and doing the best we can for the public.
Any other questions for Mr. Prater?
Prather, thank you.
Prater. Okay. Thank you for your report, and thank you also, Mr. Moore.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
And we'll move on to 5B on the agenda, which is the Lake Agassiz Regional Library, Moorhead Library, and Summer Outreach report by Ms. Liz Lynch and Ms. Megan Kruger.
Mayor Judd and members of the council, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you tonight about Lake Agassiz Regional Library and the Moorhead Public Library. Lake Agassiz Regional Library is one of 12 public regional library systems in the state of Minnesota, and Lake Agassiz Regional Library provides public library service in 22 communities in a 7-county service area. The Moorhead Public Library is the largest library within the Lake Agassiz Regional Library System, and it is a shining example of what a public library should be for its community. Over the years, Lake Agassiz Regional Library and the Moorhead Public Library have listened to the wants and the needs of the community of Moorhead, and we've responded in the form of various programs and services. The Lake Agassiz Regional Library headquarters, which is where I work, is located in the lower level of the Moorhead Public Library. We actually rent office space from the city of Moorhead. We take care of, in the regional office, we take care of all the behind-the-scenes operations for the 22 libraries that we serve. We take care of we're responsible for all the IT and computer maintenance across the region. We select, purchase, process, and get all the books and materials and DVDs and everything that a customer would check out ready for those 22 locations. We maintain a statewide interlibrary loan service, a daily courier service where we drive our materials around from location to location. We provide HR, finance, and marketing services, and of course, we provide region-wide programming for both youth and adults. This includes programming funded by the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund from the Minnesota Legacy Amendment, in addition to the summer library experience, which Megan will talk about more. We take care of all the behind-the-scenes operations in our regional office so that the staff working the front lines in the libraries can focus on providing the best possible customer service to those individuals who are walking through the front door, and also focus on the best possible programs and services that meet the needs of the residents of Moorhead. While those of us in the regional office are taking care of all those behind-the-scenes operations, it's those who work the front lines who should be commended for their service they provide to our library customers and community members. The Moorhead Public Library has a lot to offer this summer, and I'll turn it over to Megan Krieger, who is the director of the Moorhead Public Library, so she can tell you the specifics of what's happening this summer.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Again, my name is Megan Krieger. I am lucky enough to be the director of the Moorhead Public Library. I grew up going to that library, so it's really special to have this job now, and it's the best job I could imagine. Again, thanks for having us here tonight. Liz mentioned that we have a lot going on this summer, but we've actually had a pretty busy year so far, so I just have a few updates for you. You should all have a copy of this packet. In the packet is our 2018 impact report. Now we're halfway through the year now, but I am happy to say that a lot of these numbers are up from previous years. More people are visiting the library every day, so we see 700 to 1,000 people in the doors each day. More groups are using our meeting rooms. More people are attending events, seeking technology assistance, and utilizing our digital collection. We've also introduced new services this year, including our wireless printing and notary services, both of which are heavily used and fill a demand in our community. Other services that continue to be in high demand include our free public meeting rooms and test proctoring services. All of these services are used on a daily basis, and we're not aware of any other place in town where you can access these services free of cost. Also new this year is our partnership with Meals on Wheels. So what we do here is volunteers through the Meals on Wheels program deliver books to individuals who aren't able to get to the library. We've also created a new, larger event space. Liz mentioned the legacy programs that we offer region-wide. We see, 60 to 120 people, and if you've been in the library, you know that we can't accommodate that kind of crowd. So we removed some shelving units to make space for people, so that will tide us over for now. Summer activities include summer reading for youth and different outreach activities. The 2019 Summer Library Experience began June 1st and will go through the middle of August. So this is a reading incentive program for people really of all ages, but with the focus on encouraging children to read throughout the summer months. Research indicates that children who participate in summer reading programs are less likely to experience academic regression while school is not in session. So the program allows kids to read whatever they enjoy reading, and this helps improve vocabulary, retention, and just general knowledge. Parents have found our program encourages reluctant readers and improves reading skills and enjoyment for their children. This year's theme is Explore and includes prizes for completed reading logs and weekly educational programs. Program presenters include the Concordia Science Academy, the Moorhead High Robotics Team, the Gooseberry Park Players, and many more. And weekly events typically see more than 100 children in attendance. We're also working with Moorhead schools to offer story time in city parks in conjunction with the Summer Food Service Program. So this is where children can go and receive free meals throughout the city during the summer when they're not getting those meals at school. So what we do is we send library staff to 3 different parks each week where these programs are happening. We read stories, we give out free books, and we facilitate other activities while we're there. Children and parents have given positive feedback to our presence there. Interactions with families have resulted in children picking up trash and taking pride in their city park. So it's kind of going beyond what we expected to come from that program. Last year, this program served 45 to 70 children each week, and we're seeing higher numbers this year. Of course, there's many families in the community that would wish to come to the library but can't due to transportation, so it's our goal to remove that barrier and get out there and offer services where they're needed. We're also reaching new audiences by offering services off-site, such as technology assistance at the Moorhead Senior Center, and participating in community events such as Midco Kid Fest and the Moorhead Farmers Market and other locations. Our goal, again, is to extend services beyond the building and introduce services to people who maybe just haven't been there before. Because our success at the farmers market last summer was so great, we're going to attend the farmers market every week this summer, offer library card sign up, help with ebook, e-audiobook downloads, and offer books for people to check out. And that's really just a small taste of what we do every day. Thank you for your continued support of Lake Agassiz Regional Library. We would not be able to offer these services to the community without that. So I welcome any questions you might have, and thank you.
Councilmember Carlson.
Thank you. I actually have 3 questions. The first is, you talked about that free books are given to the children who are participating in the lunch program. Where do those free books come from?
We get some from the Friends of the Moorhead Library, some from Moorhead Schools, actually, and there's another place Jenna gets them from, do you know?
I think some of them are discarded books.
Discarded books from the collection, so.
Awesome. And I think that those types of collaborations are really helpful, not only just to those organizations, but anytime you can partner with others and extend the use of a book, extend the use of human resources, I think that's always beneficial. Right. Can you talk a little bit about the ebook usage and the cost and how that compares to the cost of purchasing an actual hardcover book?
Sure. Do you want to talk about that? You might be able to talk about it better than I can. They're expensive, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it all depends on the publisher and the title, but ebooks are quite expensive. We do buy a lot of items that are on sale to try to save money, because we know that when people want a book, they just want a book to download. Sometimes they're not even picky and choosy about the exact title. But there's a huge markup on it, and it's interesting because we do allow our customers to send in requests to say, oh, will you buy this title or that title? And we turn away between $25,000 and $35,000 worth of requests from community members in the 7 counties every month, because it's such a popular service.
Can you explain the difference? Because I think, Audible is one of the sources that you can subscribe to get a free download every month, and it's not that expensive to the consumer. Are you able to get the cost of the book or the ebook for that same price, or is it a different price for you?
It's a different price for libraries.
Okay. And what is the difference in the price?
To be honest, I don't know the exact difference, and I think it always just depends on the publisher and the title.
Is it sometimes significant for the more popular books?
Oh, yes, for sure.
And then I know one of the questions I frequently get asked is why the library is not open on Sundays, particularly in the wintertime where families are trying to find something to do on a snowy, cold winter day. Could you explain a little bit as to why that is occurring?
Sure. A few years ago, there was a time when Lake Agassiz Regional Library asked for a certain amount of funding, an increase to maintain services, and that funding request did not come through. And so we have to make cuts dollar for dollar when that funding does not come through. And so the first thing we cut was Sundays. And so now, if the city wanted Sundays back again, it's something that we could certainly look at, but it's really a decision that the city of Moorhead would have to make, because it would not just be funding at what we would be asking for instance, for 2020. It would be above and beyond that to implement those services back again, if that makes sense.
Councilmember White.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to thank you for your great service. I don't think most people realize just the wide variety of services that you provide and the population that you're serving, from infants to seniors with many different interests and needs, and it's just you're such a valuable resource. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions Ms. Lynch, Ms. Kruger? I just wanted to piggyback and say thank you as well. I, again, I didn't realize how much the library is doing to expand beyond the actual brick and mortar to provide services for our residents. So kudos and thank you for your creativity and approach to doing that. Oh, Councilmember Watson Curry.
Something. Full disclosure too, I used to work for the regional library and youth services at the Moorhead Library. So I would echo what you said, Ms. Lynch, and say it is a shining example of what you can do. There is a way to support the library too for citizens, and I'm forgetting the name of that program. Maybe you already mentioned that, but the monthly donation.
Oh, the
I don't know.
page turners.
Yes.
You can sign up to give monthly to the library at any level you would like.
What is that called? I'm sorry?
It's called the Page Turners.
Page turners.
And if you visit our website, which is larl.org, there is a button for Support the Library.
And if I can also just say, it's been so fun to be on the receiving end of services, where I used to help with the story times and other things too. It's really fun to now go with my son and go to some of the youth and baby story times as well too. So it's fun to see through new eyes all of the different things that you guys do. So I'll echo the gratitude and things that have already been mentioned. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to item number 6 on the agenda to approve the minutes from the June 10th, 2019 council meeting.
Move to approve.
Motion was made by Councilmember White, seconded by Councilmember Paulson. All in favor of said motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We move on to item number 7, citizens addressing the council. Again, oh, one moment, please. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the city council on items that are not on the current agenda. Items requiring council action may be deferred to staff, boards, or commissions for research and future council agendas if appropriate. And again, we would ask that if anyone wishes to speak, please fill out the yellow request to speak forms as mentioned earlier in the meeting. And I believe this evening we have one individual who wishes to speak. If you may approach, I believe this is Mr. Eric Smith. And Mr. Smith, if you would state your name for the record, please, and then also your address.
My name is Eric Smith. I live at 1812 34th Avenue South here in Moorhead. So what I would like to address is I thank you for you guys coming in from the library. You guys do a tremendous job. We obviously want the public to be educated, and we want them to be knowledgeable. And I think the library being open and some extra funding on a Sunday would probably be worthy. Definitely better to have kids involved in books than drugs or other activities, definitely. So I would definitely encourage maybe some extra funding by the city on that. Mr. Gertz, I would like to thank you for your service to the community. Heard that you had resigned. With that, I am interested in running, and I will be running for the spot that is coming open. I will be using help funding my campaign. I will be on a public right-of-way, selling my Trump merchandise, keeping America great. I'm going to run for the spot. I look forward to getting educated. I'd like to get my hands on a lot of information, the city budget, and many more things, educate myself, learn what the issues are, and do my best. And Mr. Judd, I thank you for your time. And like I say, as far as the mosquito control goes as well, I was going to address that really quickly. I think they do an excellent job. The benefit outweighs the risk, so it's hard to argue with that. And they do a mighty good job. So we must commend them, and once again, thanks to the library staff for coming in. Definitely appreciate your hard work. Thank you, and that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Smith, I will say one thing, just so you know, if you come to a meeting, it is protocol to remove your hat.
Yes, sir, I know, I understand. I wasn't sure if it was okay or not, but.
Oh,
out
no,
of
I
respect.
don't mind. I'm all about free speech,
and
but
then
I'm
the
just
other-
saying, just be sure to remove your hat because this is kind of
Correct.
protocol and respect, yeah.
Thank you. And then my question is as far as paperwork, what is the protocol for applying for the spot as far as putting in for candidacy?
I'd have to defer to Mr. City Attorney, Mr. Shockley.
So, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight, the city council will decide whether or not they're going to formally direct staff to start the process of having Councilmember Gertz's position subject to a special election this fall. If the council authorizes us to move forward, the process would be a requirement to file an affidavit of candidacy. I don't have the specific dates for it, but it's generally in the later part of July through the first part of August. And then there's and that gets the process started for a candidate who's interested. Once you've filed your affidavit of candidacy, there's certain requirements for fundraising and other items that you'll have to educate yourself about. And then it's a matter of campaigning, and if you get enough votes, then you'll be elected to the position. So it's pretty straightforward, but there'll be more information about it, assuming the council authorizes us to move forward.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it. And like I say, I'll be setting up on public boulevards. I'm sure that's not a problem.
Well, we cannot give you any legal advice on that, but I would just say if you have any questions about, the protocol and what how to do that, I would contact the city, and City Attorney Shockley can speak on that.
Correct. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And for public information, you can't post election signs on public right-of-way.
Correct.
So it'd have to be on private property. So.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We'll move on to agenda item number 9, which is a public hearing. One moment, please. So there's a public hearing. We have a couple this evening. For item number 9, there's a public hearing regarding the request of Chad Hahn on behalf of Gavilon Fertilizer LLC for property tax exemption for a commercial project located at 2012 28th Avenue South, I believe parcel number 58.900.1161. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
Second.
Motion made by Councilmember Carlson, seconded by Councilmember White. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. We are now in public meeting, or hearing, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. As stated, this is a commercial industrial property tax exemption. Up on the screen, you have a little bit of information on the project itself. Mr. Hahn had a conflict tonight and was not able to attend the meeting. But in short, they have plans to replace their old office building on site with one new larger building. They will plan to construct a 4,800 square foot building with a 1,200 square foot office space. The remaining 3,600 square foot would be used for shop. This shop also stores egg fertilizers and wholesale trade. A little bit about our commercial industrial property tax incentive. You may recall we did some revisions to this last year. There's two kind of basically term levels, a 3-year term and a 5-year term. Between $150,000 and just under $1 million of new taxable value with retention or creation of 1 to 2 jobs equates to a 3-year term. Over $1 million in new taxable value with 3+ jobs created or retained equals a 5-year term. This particular project is estimated at $475,000. The estimated tax incentive is $22,800. The project, if approved tonight, would start in July of 2019 with an estimated completion of October 2019. This project does meet all of our criteria based on the commercial industrial property tax incentive, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Councilmember Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any problems with exemptions. I don't know of maybe one or two that I've ever voted no on. But this one concerns me because of what is done there and where it is. Can you talk about what exactly is produced at that site and how it is allowed so close to a campus and neighborhoods?
Yeah, I can't get into probably the specifics of what is stored there. I know there's a variety of different products there from a fertilizer standpoint. In regards to the zoning, this does meet our zoning requirements, so it is a permitted use that's there. I don't know if there is any history, and I know Christie's here too. I don't know if there's any history with any neighborhoods that have been built in recent time adjacent to it. So I don't know if, Christie, you have any background on that or not, but it does meet our zoning code.
Okay, I guess I would have questions about the zoning then, and what that nasty smelling plume of white cloud is that comes out of those pipes every once in a while. It literally invades, permeates M-State, and we can smell it in our classrooms if the wind is blowing the wrong direction. So it's always concerned me, the location of that facility. So it's not the tax exemption that I'm concerned about, it's just that facility right there and how close it is to students and families and neighborhoods.
Sure, and I'd be happy to pass that along to Mr. Hahn too, to get more clarification in the future as well.
Christy, I do see you in the audience. Can you explain how, maybe a little bit more about the history of how that facility has been able to be kind of in a commercial, community commercial zone and not an industrial zone?
So I think it's one of those land uses that if you had to do it all over, it probably would not be in this location.
Yeah.
That's definitely recognized. And I just want to note, the council communication really wasn't clear about the zoning completely.
Okay.
The fertilizer portion of it actually is only allowed in light industrial. In this case, or an industrial zoning district. In this case, what they're doing is they're demolishing a pretty dilapidated office and storage existing building, and they're building a new office and storage. So we kind of looked at that the office and storage piece of it would be an allowable land use in that commercial zoning district. So they would not be able to expand the commercial fertilizer aspect of it, but because it was just the office area, we allowed that rebuilding.
Okay, all right. That helps. Have we ever had any talks to the owner about maybe relocating that portion, that problematic portion, to our industrial zone?
I believe that they have had some preliminary discussions, especially because this intersection has always been looked at as a possible new interchange with I-94. But moving the tanks of that size is extremely expensive. So I don't believe that, I believe that it's cost prohibitive to try to move a facility of that nature.
Okay, all right, thank you. That helps.
Councilmember Hendrickson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Derek, I don't have a problem with, like Heidi said, with the projects, but when I go to Unite parties, I often get complaints about that area because I don't know if it's steam or what's coming out, but they say when it does come out, it's hard to go outside. So I'm wondering if they've passed like Minnesota Pollution Control Agency standards, or if they've had any violations. I'd kind of be interested in that too.
I am not aware of any violations. Like I said, I can certainly follow up with Mr. Hahn and on some of these issues that are addressed tonight. I think they're valid concerns that the property owner definitely needs to be aware of. So I am not aware of any in compliance or compliance issues that they may have. But again, I can certainly pass those along to see if we can have some of those addressed for future.
Sure, and I'm not saying they did have them. I'm just, just what I hear from my constituents when we're out. They say there's a pretty strong odor, but I'm not sure if it's coming from there or something else. But
absolutely.
So, thanks.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions for Mr. Lapointe? Seeing none? Okay. At this point, unless there's no other questions or comments, I'll ask any members of the audience, is there anyone here that would also like to speak on this public hearing? I'll ask a second time, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak or be heard on this public hearing? Seeing none, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Councilmember Watson Curry, seconded by Councilmember White. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And then now is there a motion to act on a resolution to approve the property tax exemption for Gavilon Fertilizer LLC for a commercial project located at 2012 28th Avenue South with the parcel number previously stated?
I move to approve the property tax exemption.
I'll second.
Motion made by Councilmember White, seconded by Councilmember Watson Curry. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Then next up, there'll be the second public hearing, item number 10. Public hearing regarding the request of Jeff Bradley on behalf of Thrive Behavioral Network. I believe that's 3 LLC for a commercial project located at 1704 Bellesley Boulevard, parcel number 58.619.0010. Is there a motion to open the public hearing in this matter? Motion made by Councilmember Duran, seconded by Councilmember Carlson. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Mr. Lapointe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As stated, this is another commercial industrial property tax incentive application. As stated before, Mr. Bradley had a conflict as well, so he is not in attendance tonight. So I'll try my best to answer your questions. This is an application to basically remodel a lower level of an existing building to make it ADA compliant. And also to construct a new one-level addition of approximately 1,000 square foot to add 4 individual beds, a bathroom, and a group treatment space. A little bit about the facility itself. This is an intensive residential treatment service program. It includes time-limited residential services to individuals who are in need of structured setting. There are designations to develop and enhance psychiatric stability, personal and emotional adjustment, self-sufficiency, and necessary skills to live in a more independent setting. A little bit of note on this application itself. When we talked to Mr. Bradley initially, they were seeking a multifamily housing exemption. After having further conversations with city staff and Mr. Bradley, based on the time duration of some of these individuals that would stay at the facility and the services that they're providing, we felt that it functioned more as a commercial facility, as providing these services rather than an apartment where somebody can necessarily live or rent or occupy and own a space. So that's why you see this as more of a commercial industrial tax incentive. A little bit about the project itself. The new estimated value is approximately $200,000, which based on our term table equates to a 3-year property tax exemption on the, again, new value, right? I forgot to mention that in the other one, the existing value will still be taxable. If approved today, the construction would begin in July of 2019 with an estimated completion of November of 2019. Again, with Mr. Bradley not in attendance, I'd be happy to try to answer any of your questions. And this does meet all the necessary requirements of our commercial industrial property tax incentive.
Councilmember Dahlquist.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just curious if this is accurate. 8 new positions, paying positions for 4 bedrooms, an addition of 4 bedrooms. It seems like, I mean, I worked with the mental health facilities and the overnights and all that sort of thing, and you would have 2 people for the full facility, and so I'm just curious. I mean, it's great if they have that many more positions, but do you know anything about that?
Yeah, and you'll notice here some are full-time, some are part-time. I know they're expanding their services too, so I know that has come into consideration when they've done the count. I will note too that, you know, this is a preliminary application of what they expect to hire. We do some follow-up once they are operational to make sure what they have for jobs for reporting's sake. But Mr. Bradley had indicated that these are the number of employees that they expect to have.
Any other questions or comments from Mr. LaPointe? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask on this particular hearing, is there anyone in the audience that wishes to be heard regarding this public hearing? Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to be heard on this public hearing? Seeing none, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Motion made by Councilmember Duran, seconded by Councilmember Watson Curry. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Then I'll ask for, excuse me, a motion to approve 10A, the resolution to approve the property tax exemption for Thrive Behavioral Network 3 LLC for a commercial project located at 1704 Bellesley Boulevard with the previous stated parcel number. Motion made by Councilmember Carlson, seconded by Councilmember Hendrickson. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And we'll move on to, I believe, item number 14. That's what I have, which is a resolution to approve a location for a Moorhead dog park, presented by Mr. Steve Moore.
All right, so we're all over the spectrum this evening. This one's exciting as a dog lover and an owner. So it's a fun one too. So we've put a lot of work together. I'm kind of pinch hitting for Holly because she's a little under the weather and her voice is a little rough. So you get to hear my velvety tones this evening. So just kind of want to get you up to speed of where we're at, and then up to speed on what we've done since the last update, and then kind of sum up what we're asking your help with this evening. So, in strategic planning, one of the priorities for community amenities capital improvement program was a Southside Dog Park. And so the process we implemented was we got a team of staff members together to look at some locations, and we looked at all current city-owned property. So what do we have that we could site this location for a dog park? And then to engage the community, and then to develop cost estimates on what this project is going to cost, and develop kind of a concept so we can solicit donations as part to help fund this project. So we made it basically through the first 3 steps. This is your working group from all parts of the staff. We have Parks and Rec, Planning, Public Works, to include Parks Maintenance. So we had the, all over the spectrum on how folks think. So it was a really good team, and it was a fun process. So the first initial phase, we looked at 3 areas: River Oaks Park, Southside Regional Park, and the trails at Stone Mill Park. So that area that's south of the existing park property, which is city-owned. And then we developed a scoring matrix to say, what would be the best location? Well, and we put some criteria, some critical elements, and these were developed using a guide on what makes a successful dog park. So 2+ acres, parking, water, which is one of the premier things to have at a dog park, and anything from trees for shade, grass, and access. So all those were included to include any concerns of a surrounding neighborhood at those sites. So we checked all the boxes, and you could see the clear front runner was River Oaks Point. So we proceeded with some concepts on what to do there. So we kind of had it mapped out. It's got a lot of positives, and that was going to be our recommendation. And then the next step, though, was community involvement. So we didn't want to just plop this thing down and and go for it. We want to make this a fun and a successful and a positive project for Moorhead and the community. So we went out to the public, and we had a 350-foot cordon, is how I would call it, and a block club gathering, and we got a lot of feedback from those folks within that 350-foot cordon. And you have those comments specifically included in your packet, so you could see the types of inputs that we received. A few positives, but a lot were on the negative side of that. So just keep that in mind when we talk about what we're going to talk about, our recommendation to move forward. So with that result, we decided, well, let's take a step back and let's go look at some other areas. And, there's some stats here on this slide. Of the comments received, 18 opposed and 8 in support. And we did send a letter out to those residents saying, we did receive your comments and we're going to reevaluate. So we let everybody know what was going on. So we went back and said, well, let's try to find some more property. So we got a couple other areas that we looked at. One is down south off of 40th Avenue, and it's also known as the Krebs property. It's a future development property, so that would be done in conjunction with the developing neighborhood. And then also, not really to the south, but Riverfront Park. And we applied the same criteria that we did for the previous 3 locations, and we thought that both of those are viable options, and each of those had advantages and disadvantages. So the disadvantage of 40th Avenue is that it's going to be a couple years out, because we would have to get that working with the development of that subdivision. The good news is you're developing a subdivision around what would be an existing dog park, so people who are going to move there are going to move for that feature most likely, so you won't have any neighborhood concerns. Riverfront Park, it's got a lot of pluses, it's got utilities, it's centrally located, although it's the biggest disadvantage is we were looking for a south side dog park location, and this is a central location. It has some mature trees, not a lot, but if we position them correctly, there'll be some decent trees there. Vehicle access, parking, there's a lot of infrastructure that's already existing in that spot. That currently there's old tennis courts and an old rec center that will be demolished this summer. Not related to this project, but we are looking to redevelop Riverfront Park to make it a better park for whether a dog park goes there or not, but it'll be returned to green space and it'll look really nice. So that's where we're at, and we really would like to listen to some discussion on all the locations and the options and get your input as a council on where we might proceed next with a location. We haven't done any cost estimates or fundraising or conceptual design because we have to wait to find out where we're going to put this. Southside Regional Park, that would have to, that would be a little bit delayed as well because we have to redo the master plan for that park. And that would have to go through the master planning process, would have to get buy-in from the community in that location. It's a regional park, so that would delay that location. So hopefully I summed up the locations well enough that we can open it up for discussion.
Did you want to add some clarification? Okay, so we'll go.
Thank you, Steve. I'm sorry, Holly, you're not feeling well there. 2 points of clarification. One, I think our top 5 capital priorities in the strategic plan by the council is a south side dog park. Is that correct?
That is correct. In that term specifically, south side dog park, yes.
Okay. And the second clarification is the input, the 18 against 8 for was only, I know you said this, I want to highlight it though, for the homes 350 feet around the perimeter, not the whole south side of Moorhead.
Yes, we did not expand that survey
We just did
out.
that small area. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Councilmember White?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts on this. 'Cause first of all, I can say that when I was out talking to neighbors last year, that this issue came up almost, it probably was one of the most frequent topics of discussion. and overwhelmingly in favor of putting a dog park on the south side, and many of them specifically mentioned River Oaks Point. So I was actually kind of shocked when I heard that there was strong opposition, and I think that we haven't heard from a lot of people that really are very supportive of that. I do have some concerns about having one at Riverfront. I really do think that area needs to be developed, but I do think it would be redundant to have one there because I measured out the distance, mapped it out, and it's 0.58 miles to the Fargo Dog Park. And so they already have a dog park that's less than a mile away that many of us already are using. And that one actually, for people in my neighborhood and near Concordia, it's a really easy walk. You just take the floating bridge across and you can access that one. When I looked through the comments about River Oaks Point, I do think, I think that there's finding a way of balancing the community, the larger community's interest, with also making sure that we are really addressing some of the concerns of some of the residents there. And so I had a couple of questions. One, I know that some people did talk about they would like to see it moved a little further west, and I can see where we've got land that would be more flood prone, but I wondered if you have spoken with the folks in Fargo, because the park that they have on the Fargo side, I think it floods pretty consistently. And so, how does that work to have one that would flood regularly?
That's a great question. So and I go to the one in Fargo as well, and not to knock that one, but what we would be putting in our side of the river would have, there's no amenities over there in the Fargo. It is what it is. It's like our north side dog park. So if it floods, you got fence there and some dirt.
Right.
What we're proposing to do is going to be a premier FM area dog park with amenities of obstacles and a water feature for the dogs, and plenty of options that we're going to get the pulse from the community on what they want to see there. So it would be more damageable, so to speak, with what we envision. So, but you're right, if it was just a piece of land with a fence around it, flooding is not a concern, but what we're envisioning this park to be, it would be a concern for maintenance and repair.
Well, part of the reason why I mentioned that is I think by reading the comments, I think that park already is a de facto dog park. And I think that actually putting in something along those lines like they have on the Fargo side might actually alleviate some of those concerns. Because I think that there are people, people are regularly taking their dog there and not always cleaning it up. And you have more, unpleasant interactions with humans because of that. And so if there was a fenced in area, that first of all, it would be an easier place to contain and to clean up, and you'd have less of some of the problems that people are currently seeing if we did formalize it as a dog park rather than keep it the way it is right now.
And we do have a couple of pictures that show the flood at, because the area you're talking about is at the point there. So that's the 30-foot flood level, and then this is the 36-foot flood level. It's what we want to envision as far as the dog park, so that's certainly something to consider.
Councilmember Gertz.
Just a couple of questions. Are there certain hours that the park would be open?
Yes, because it would be a secured area. I guess we haven't really talked about that because it's right offhand. I don't think there's a limitation on the north side dog park because we don't secure that. But that would be something that we could consider. Well, if it's in I can answer that. So I'm changing my answer. So it'd be closed at 10 o'clock because the park would be closed.
Final answer?
In essence. Final answer, yes. Thinking out loud and my mouth is moving, so, yeah, that's a great question, though. But in theory, it would be closed at 10.
Okay, and then I guess we used to have a dog, but we don't anymore. But we never took our dog to a dog park. What's the typical usage in a day? I suppose it's probably ties to the amenities and how nice or how popular it is, but.
Yeah, we don't track numbers at the North Side Park, but I go by there several times a day. It's very infrequently used, Part of the reason is location. I don't like to go up, I'll be honest, I work here and I don't go up there because it's north wind and there's no trees. And so it's not a great dog park. So that's why I really want to make this next one, a step above and trees, mature trees and protection from that wind is a major player.
And are there busier times during the day than others?
I don't know.
And, a lot of these questions are kind of derivative of some of the comments that.
Oh, sure, yes, yes.
If I could add, I attended a public meeting also of the group there, and the ones that are right next to the park, of course, we all know it's a dog park. It functions as a dog park already for that group, but they were really adamantly opposed also about the increased traffic in a neighborhood. Because most of the people using a dog park, other than those right in that area, will drive into the site. So that's why the centrally located one, if you're in your car, the thought is that you're gonna have to drive anyway, but they were very concerned about the neighborhoods and driving down that street, the increased traffic already. I think 5 o'clock is the heavy time for a dog park, right after work.
But one of the comments was, that the police should patrol it more often when there's more traffic down there. I would think that then you'd have fewer other activities that might be going on that would be suspicious. Just by having more traffic, more people.
Yeah, they certainly
using the
want
area.
more activity in that park.
Pardon?
The residents certainly want more activity in that park.
Yeah.
They would just like something other than barking dogs in there, using their.
Yeah, and that was another one of my questions, just the noise level. Typically, if there's a bunch of dogs, do they just like run around and play with one another, or do they actually bark?
I mean, I've been in parks in the DC area, and those are hugely busy. There's some barking, but it's not constant barking. And there's surprisingly, the ones I've been to, they run around and play and growl at each other, but it's not like constant barking that you might get when somebody leaves their animal outside for long periods of time in a fenced-in area.
Okay, and I think the River Oaks Park would be a excellent location for some of the same reasons that it scored so high on your chart, and maybe by investing in some evergreen trees that would maybe screen it from the neighbors, that might help make it more palatable to them. I don't know if it'll eliminate all the noise, but maybe part of it is, I see you have a section with for small dogs and a section for large dogs. And maybe they don't need to be adjacent to one another, but in the same park area where the larger dog area, which requires more space, a little further to the west, and you'd probably eliminate some of that resistance to having it there. But I think that another area that I was thinking that would be a potential area, doesn't have all the amenities that River Oaks Point has, but would be adjacent to the new Southside Water Tower. It's not developed. Obviously, there'll be water there because they're going to have a water tower there. And but there wouldn't be any trees. So there's some of those drawbacks that eventually could be developed. I know Fargo has one on 45th Street that's right underneath their one of their big water towers off of just north of 13th Avenue. But maybe another possibility you could look at. But I would like to have staff maybe have a community meeting and get some feedback on if we did place it further to the west, would that be as objectionable?
In River Oaks Point.
In River Oaks Point, yeah.
Clarification.
Thank you.
Councilmember Gertz, are you saying a community meeting to involve more of the community or just the neighborhood for feedback?
Well, I mean, if it's a community dog park, I mean, you probably have a lot of positive feedback from the than the community as a whole. But I think you got to listen to some extent to the neighborhood, and they have some input because it'll be impacting them every day. But sometimes decisions like this are hard because you have to make a decision that affects the masses instead of the few. And so I'm just trying to strike that balance of making sure that they're heard and how can we react to some of their concerns.
If I could just add, I went to a community meeting during the flood. It was a block club meeting, so they could get information about the river levels at that time. And there were many more people that commented than filled out the cards. So in an effort, I guess I would like more information about the direction we would want to take. Otherwise, we'll flood the council chambers with the group. So what would that public input look like to get further out? And if it's a bigger parameter, is it the whole community or 1,000 feet or?
Good question, Holly. Let me just ask the council. I think what we need first is direction from you on the locations you want us to really look at. And then if you still want us to look at River Oak points, right, then do you want us to do a bigger community meeting? I think I hear that's what Councilmember Gertz is saying, to get more input, both the neighbors and the bigger community. So we need direction from the council on what to do at this point.
Council member, just because I saw her first, Durand, then we'll get Mr. Hendrickson.
I would then move forward with the River Oaks Park location.
If there is, are you making a motion, or does anyone want to second or have more further discussion on this? Okay, so then I'll defer to Councilmember Hendrickson. Is this a motion, or are you making a motion?
Yes, I was making a motion to move ahead with River Oaks Park location.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, seeing none, I think we're gonna go with more discussion. So, Councilmember Hendrickson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that Councilmember Gertz with that idea about around the water tower, because it's a really nice dog park in Fargo, just off 45th, so I think if we could mirror that, it'd be good. But how long would that take to develop? Would that be another 2 years around that area?
I don't know the timing on the water tower. Oh, there we go, Christie.
I'll just note that the water tower property is directly adjacent to the Krebs property, which was one of the examples given to you. So our idea was if we were going to take a couple more years to look at that particular area, which is still developing, we might include it in the scope for the future comprehensive plan to really come up with an entire development concept for that 77 acres. Again, that's right next to the water tower property, and include the construction of the dog park with the development of the property. So it is right next to the one that you're talking about.
Okay. You know, I like the River Oaks Park. I think it's a good, I mean, the tennis courts there are in pretty bad shape, and same thing with the community rec center there. But,
Riverfront, not River Oak.
okay, riverfront, whatever. It's by a river, okay? But, you know, I live towards the Krebs area, and I'm not sure how that, I haven't heard anything from that area yet. I'm sure I will after this, so, but, you know, I think it'd probably be pretty good there. I don't know the type of complaints we're gonna get, and like you said, the noise. I mean, with the waste, I mean, is it the responsibility of the people to pick that up? Because I've heard that.
Absolutely.
And if they don't?
Well, then we're left holding the bag, so to speak.
That's the end of my questions.
Let me get, I'll go back to Councilmember Gertz, but I'm working my way through. So, Councilmember Carlson.
Just a few follow-up questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few follow-up questions from what Councilmember Gertz was asking. You said that the park would be closed at 10. Does it close now at 10?
Yeah, all of our parks are closed at 10.
Okay, so that it has like a barrier, so you can't be driving into it, similar to
I would
Gooseberry?
have to check, yeah, I don't know if it has one like MB Johnson or Gooseberry, but, you know, in theory,
Holly
our
is
parks are
shaking her
closed,
head
so.
no.
Yeah, no. So we would, you know, obviously have to look at that, but it's not securable.
So this would actually, we pursued a dog park in that area with creating a barrier and actually closing that park at 10, it might eliminate some of the issues that the constituents have down there with some unscrupulous activity happening where they are looking maybe for law enforcement.
Yeah, it would control vehicular traffic, but not pedestrian traffic in,
Right.
which is, my guess is the issue, but.
So one of the issues, though, they did raise with the responses was about the traffic and the increased traffic flow, but there were a couple of comments that were proposing instead of the dog park to put in a playground. So Holly, with that public meeting, if a playground would go into there, not that I'm proposing that, but wouldn't that increase the same level of traffic? So is it more the issue of a dog park, or is it the issue of the traffic?
Yeah, a lot of the comments referred to that park as a neighborhood park and not a regional park. Therefore, they wanted a playground that would be for their neighborhood. Angela's is very close. I don't think that would be a consideration for a playground. We thought of it for the nature playground, but they wanted that in the downtown location. So other amenities that could go there, we haven't really given that additional thought at this point. But it would be, they wanted to remain a neighborhood park, not a regional.
Okay. And then my other two kind of comments, with the Krebs location, am I saying that correct, Krebs? So that's kind of in an open area. Would you anticipate having the same issues as far as it being extremely windy and not a lot of people wanting to go to that location because it doesn't have kind of the other criteria that you have laid out prior with like this River Oaks?
We could possibly have that, but if there's data otherwise in the Fargo location that's down south, I don't know if there's any trees around. I haven't been down there. And I haven't even been down there, but if we put good amenities in there, that'll help attract. But, you know, if it's just a fence like we have now, there's really nothing to bring people in other than a containment area for their pets.
Okay, and then the last comment I have, you said for the south side, that there's already a master plan in place for that park. So if we were to choose that location, then something else that's already been in the works will be removed from the table.
Yeah.
And the dog park would go there.
Yes. There is adequate space there for a feature like this, but it would have to go through the process to redevelop that plan.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Watson Curry.
Thank you. A comment and then, well, two comments, I guess. So one was about cleanup. So certainly any dog park that we already have bags available. So when residents and their pooches use them, they can clean up after them. I know that's essential when I talk to people who use dog parks. My dog is not well enough behaved to go out in public eye. My other question was, I don't think we should rule out River Oaks Park, and I believe the first option that you guys have listed on our communication still fulfills that, right? So then it's developing a dog park at Riverfront Park, so where there is the tennis courts and things, and then it kind of leaves it open-ended as to a true south location. Am I correct in that? So-
Yes, that's correct. So our thought was that, you know, we develop Riverfront Park, and then when you know, that gets us there faster, a nicer dog park faster, and then a couple years, then we fulfill the promise of building one south side in the Krebs or wherever it would be south side, and then eventually we would probably recommend closing the north one because due to, it's always about sustainability, is that we probably in a city of our size, 2 dog parks, well taken care of dog parks, and that would be adequate.
Thank you.
I'm going to give those who have not had a chance to speak yet, Councilmember Paulson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Steve, can you help me understand a little bit more the concept here? You know, in my mind, when we first started talking about this, I was thinking something similar to Fargo's downtown dog park, which is just a fenced-in area. There's no amenities. There isn't anything like that. And, you know, I anticipated if we built something like that in River Oaks Park, the traffic would be minimal. It would get used, but it may be similar to the use at the North Dog Park. But now, hearing some of your thoughts, I think you're visualizing this as something, you know, very much different than just a fenced-in area. So this initial sketch you have here, is it intended to be a fenced-in area here for the small dog area and the large dog area?
Yes, so if you look at the up north, the north section is for the small dogs, and there'd be a separate fence. There'd be two separate fenced areas in those access points, one near the parking lot and near the other one near the trail is one of those enclosures where you come in and you shut the gate and then you open the other one so you don't have free-flowing access in and out. And so you'd have access to both those locations whether you drive, or you have access to both those locations whether you travel with your dog along the dog path, the bike path, and then cross the street. So that was our initial thought. And then it does have a water line that feeds it, so that would feed a water feature for the dogs. And then, you know, our thought was to come up with a conceptual design and then have a list of amenities that people could donate. I have one in mind, and to dedicate to my dog in the park. So that's kind of, yes, it's more than, the vision is more than just a fence and some dirt.
Sure. And have you done regional research? Would this be the biggest facility in our region for dogs?
We haven't looked at that, but there's many examples of dog parks. There even is one, well, where was that one, where they even have a dog wash station where you can give your dog a bath and.
Possible revenue generation.
Yeah, revenue generation to support the dog park. You know, the list is endless, but I can tell you it is our most requested item. I get, just like you guys, when you go out and visit with people, it is something that people want. When they say they want it on the south side, that's where a lot of the growth is. Certainly understand that, but, you know, we're having trouble finding a piece of land.
Yeah.
Without controversy.
I like River Oaks Park as a setting for this dog park. I also noticed that the small dog area, which is almost an acre, is entirely behind the flood wall. So there were some comments that, you know, this dog park was going to, you know, destroy the scenery, and even for the barking purposes. I don't know if there's line of sight for those houses actually into the small dog area because of the flood wall at that location. So I think you know, a portion of the park is really pretty protected as far as any sort of nuisance that this park might cause to the neighbors, correct?
If I could add one thing, you know, they're closer than they look.
Yeah.
Those neighbors are much closer. Some of them are 100 yards, so that isn't very far. So
Sure,
they are
okay.
right there.
Sure, gotcha. Okay, that's all I have.
Did you want to clarify?
I do. I want to clarify. I don't think we received an answer to the question, Steve or Holly, to Councilmember Kurtz. Could you flip it and make the larger, for the large dogs more to the west?
Oh, sure.
I mean, away from the homes?
Yeah,
more?
yes, we could just flip-flop that. We just kind of.
Okay.
Really, the split was where, you know, it was kind of close to a ped access to that one location, but it could be farther south.
The other clarification is we do have some funding that was set aside for the south side dog park. So if the council decides to use it, then we're starting at zero again for a south side dog park, if you don't use it for a south side dog park. So that's important to know.
Then, Councilmember White, have you spoken on this yet? No? Okay. Then go ahead. And then we'll pass it to Councilmember Gertz.
Okay. When Councilmember Duran recommended that we move ahead, I was just hesitating because I wanted to find your recommendation in our notes, and that was the way you described option 3. And I think going back to that, I would support a sort of modified version of that because I do think we would want to get some more community input. But I think that having something on the south side is, that's definitely the message that we've been hearing, is that we really need something on the south part of town. And as I mentioned before, I think that some of the issues that are coming up in that would be alleviated. So I would like us to have continue to consider River Oaks, and then look at ways in which we could modify it to perhaps alleviate some of the neighborhood concerns. And I love your idea of a state-of-the-art dog park, but if it didn't work out to have something that met their concerns, but maybe we could meet some by having a less state-of-the-art and a more, something to that would be more, that could get through a flood, then that might be a good compromise. But maybe to come in to have a community meeting, and invite invite people not just from the neighborhood, but from the city at large, and look at some of those different options and address some of the concerns that were brought up, and see how we might address that and find a compromise that works in that location.
Sure, maybe the overwhelming input is it doesn't have to be super fancy. We just want a place to take our dogs, and then the other area of River Oaks Point could be an option. So we have to go out to that broader community input.
We'll go to Councilmember Gertz and then to Councilmember Duran.
I too agree with, Heidi's motion, but I was hesitant to second it, and just primarily because I think we should get some more input with some different options. And if it's down towards the point, it's much further away. If there is barking, you're not going to hear it because it's got a fair amount of trees. We have a beautiful picnic shelter at Gooseberry that's floodable, and could we create a dog park where you could, if it does flood, we could go down there with relatively ease and wash things down. And Gooseberry Park shelter was designed that way, that you could just take hoses and wash everything down, clean everything up, and you're up and running. I know you can't do that as easily with grass, but maybe perhaps by starting out with the basic, and then as funding allows, add those amenities to make it one of those, upper level dog parks. But it does answer the need for a Southside dog park. It's land that can't be developed otherwise. It's partially being used for that now. And, I don't know if the small dog park could be up on higher ground and the large dog on the lower ground, I think I'd like to have some more research, maybe getting all of South Moorhead input, open up cast a broader net, so to speak, for input, with yet on the same hand trying to answer the concerns of the neighborhood.
Councilmember Duran.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I apologize if I didn't make myself clear, but the intent of my motion was to follow staff recommendation that if we move forward with option 3, which is River Oaks, that we table it so they can get information from the neighborhood, which would give them also time to do some other research and answer some questions that we've brought up. So if you look under option 3, there is the recommendation right there that I would have included in my motion.
I think before I ask for a motion, I just want to clean up here real quick. I echo and I agree with what everybody has stated so far. I think the only thing I'll add just from the general city perspective is that, from door knocking, people want a Southside dog park. And I respect and I love the vision that has been talked about making this like a destination dog park. I mean, I think that's something, if we can get ahead of the curve throughout the region, I think that speaks volumes of what we could do as a city. So that would be the only input that I would have. I don't obviously have a vote, but what I will say is that I think option 3, based on what I'm hearing, seems to be the favorable option, to go back and see if we can dialogue with the residents that are going to be affected, as well as the rest of the city in South Moorhead. But I think it sounds great either way you go with it. So my input, my 2 cents. Any other comments before we call a motion? Councilmember Watson Curry?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just don't want to lose sight of the opportunities at the Riverfront Park, as those amenities are going to be going away and they're not usable by the public at this point anyhow. I think that's an interesting opportunity. I know it doesn't meet the requirements of South Moorhead, but yeah, that being my neighborhood, I'd say yes, in my backyard, please put a dog park in the Riverfront Park. So complicated. So that's my only concern, is if we're, I'm happy to explore further conversations in the community with a need that's been so clearly mentioned. But I also want us to not lose sight of some of the possibilities that would be a really positive addition to a park that's underutilized in our downtown community.
Councilmember Hendrickson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we should stop naming parks river. Thanks.
So, with that, is there a motion that someone would like for me to call or make regarding an option on this matter?
I move that we, trying to find your words, Heidi. I move that we continue looking at River Oaks Park. It's the south one, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, River Oaks Park, but do some additional follow-up with the expanding the number of individuals and citizens that are able to provide feedback with some of the additional concerns that we had already addressed.
So, in essence, you're looking at option 3 in its entirety to include the language that Councilmember Duran spoke of earlier?
Correct.
Okay. Is there a second for option 3? Okay. So motion made by Councilmember Carlson, seconded by Councilmember White. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
I didn't say aye. She was asking me a question. Aye.
Okay, no, I just want to make sure we're all, okay. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Good discussion. No, this is, I think,
Thank you.
this is the way the process works, so thank you for your time.
Absolutely, thank you. Thank you for all your work. And you too, Ms. Heitkamp. Thank you. Right, so we'll move to item number 16 on the agenda, which is a resolution to approve a memorandum of understanding with Eventide Senior Living Communities for the Silos to Circles project. And that will be introduced by Ms. Heitkamp.
Very interesting name, but Silos to Circles is a grant that was written by Eventide Senior Living Communities. It's a great opportunity for educational awareness out into the community. Basically, the grant came from Minnesota Lending Foundation, Aging Lending Foundation. So they received this, and the premise for this grant is that you can do video conferencing of things already happening within our community and send it out over a televised network that would educate a lot of our seniors in our region. Basically, a few programs that we would be putting on are things that we're already doing, like our AARP meetings, the Scam Jam that we're having tomorrow or on Wednesday, Care of the Caregiver Conference, the Medicare informational thing that we're having at the UMCOMS. So we would set up our video conferencing equipment that this grant would give us, and then we would publicize that out, and all of the 6 sites within the region would then turn the TV on and have those same opportunities. Eventide put this grant together so they could do some of their programming and also medical different things out at their other sites in Jamestown and where they have satellite locations. So basically, what we're asking is 2 things in this memorandum. One of them is to be the host site and accept the equipment. The other host sites would be Rolog, Ulen, Barnesville, Holly, and Eventide. Those are the sites that it would project out to. And they have commitments from those people. We get that whole list of equipment that you see in your communication, all mobile, that can go to different sites and locations. And the second part of the memorandum is to have our senior center coordinator be the administrator of the calendar, which means she would just take all of the emails from different people who are going to put their programming on the website, and then she would not have to put it on the website, she would just keep the calendar. Part of this grant is to pay the city of Moorhead $15,000, a one-time payment. They received the grant in 2018, but they're just have been having some hiccups as far as getting these remote locations connected and getting the equipment installed. And so their grant, Eventide's participation, ends January 1st of 2020. So this memorandum really only takes us to a few more months, and so they really want to get moving on getting it up and going. The sustainability, they will pay, the grant pays for 3 years of the hub service, which is $99 a year. Excuse me, $99 per month for all 6 hubs. So that would be divided between all of those. And so our commitment into the future is basically that. If all of the other hubs choose in the future not to do it, or we could choose not to do it. So our commitment for sustainability is just to keep the calendar until January 1st of 2020. Really, that's our commitment. But our hope is that this would be so successful that we would want to continue sending our programs out into the future. It's a great opportunity for those that are for staying home, for televising, those sorts of things. So I don't really see a downside to this, but I would entertain any questions you guys would have.
I'll say I think it's awesome.
Oh,
and
I think
it's
so
great.
too.
But with that being said, when it comes to 2020, what are the possibilities? I mean, I guess my thought is once you start this, you know it's going to be good.
Well, I think so too.
And so,
Yeah.
right, no, I
Yeah.
agree. But, you know, the issue I would have is, so in 2020, what are the partnerships that could be undertaken to keep this going?
Yeah.
And what would be, I would assume the city would be asked to be a partner in that, and what would that look like as far as costs and things of that nature?
You know, the senior center coordinator has already contacted a number of people to do their programming. When she does breakfast clubs in the morning, sometimes the police chief comes or the fire chief. And so we feel like that's our focus of our senior center. We don't just do meals, we do a lot of education, like Medicare seminar today. Is over there. So we feel like we have so much program already happening, and that is our focus, that, you know, the sky's the limit into the future. I told Shelley, I said she does an ageism speech or talk. I think those kinds of things would be wonderful on this.
And the reason why I mention that is because come 2020, you know, if the program, which is going to be successful, is
Yeah.
going to need additional funding, we need to probably, you know, have a heads up that might be the case.
I'm certainly including in my 2020 budget the subscription fee, that if everybody else, if some would drop out of the program, that we would want to continue.
I think if possible, y'all are going to be monitoring this anyway, right?
Yeah.
As far as the feedback and how it's working.
Yeah.
It would be good just to keep that information coming, so,
Yeah.
you know, we can find out how successful it is.
Absolutely.
So-
Our reporting for the grant will end January 1st of 2020, but that doesn't mean we won't keep doing that. We have some minimal reporting back to the grant.
Thank you. Does that bring up any questions or comments or for Councilmember Carlson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this grant from Leading Age Minnesota Foundation is fantastic. The purpose behind Silos to Circles, if you think about what the name is, actually taking individuals who are very isolated in remote communities and bringing them into the circle of communication with the lack of community engagement. I mean, it's a great title, right?
Thank you.
And isolation and lack of community engagement is actually one of the highest risk factors for elder abuse and abuse in later life. So by doing this, this is actually a very proactive approach to addressing an issue that if it were to occur, would take a number of huge community resources. I'm not sure if you brought it up, Holly, that all of the equipment that would be utilized, the technical equipment, all of that would then become city-owned by Moorhead. I think that that's a great benefit to us. And the $99 a month, I'm wondering if there could be, I know you said you were going to put in the budget, would that be a memorandum of understanding that could be perhaps signed by all these other hubs? I think there's 9 or 11. So the cost would be pretty minimal to the city of Moorhead if each of those hubs paid for a certain portion of that $99 a month.
I think just the 6 ended up signing up. So it is very minimal per month. But the grant pays for 3 years, the first 3 years.
Thank you.
Does that bring up any questions or comments? Okay.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve the resolution to approve a memorandum of understanding with Eventide Senior Living Communities for the Silo to Circles project? Moved by Councilmember Carlson, seconded by Councilmember Hendrickson. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We will move to item number 17 on the agenda, which is a resolution to approve and fund Moorhead Proud Call for Art proposals. Ms. Citrowski, did I pronounce your name?
Yes, you did.
Rock on. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm so excited to share with you the recommendations from the Art and Culture Commission's Call for Art. Here's a brief history. So last year, the city approved the establishment of the Moorhead Community Fund, where we can solicit donations for certain amenities to benefit our community. And shortly after that fund was established, a $25,000 donation was received for public art that would make our community proud, Moorhead proud. Late last year, council approved for the Art and Culture Commission to issue a call for art to receive proposals, and 6 were received by the deadline. And so as the public art policy outlines, there's a staff and Art and Culture Commission subcommittee, we call it the Art Review Team, came together to review the proposals amongst the criteria that are outlined in that public art policy, and they thoroughly vetted all of the different options, and we reached out to the artists who did the proposals and got some clarifications. So now we are proposing 2 projects to be funded by this donation. The first one is a mural at Ace Hardware of Florence Klingensmith for $9,400. Florence is a Moorhead native who was featured in the Fly Girls book. That book is, as our library folks shared with you earlier, they have a program of a one book, one community program that they've had for many years. And this book is the feature book for 2019. So the community libraries are bringing in the author later this year, October 28th, I believe. So they're hoping to get this mural installed by that time so we can enhance that community discussion and conversation with featuring one of our own. The second one that's being recommended is a storm drain community art project by Riverkeepers. So they're looking at taking 4 artists that they would select and finding 4 neighborhood block clubs that would be interested in collaborating with that artist to develop artwork for their storm drains, to educate that neighborhood as they develop the artwork to be implemented in 4 different neighborhoods, hopefully in somewhat high profile, high traffic areas, still yet to be determined. And so these are the 2 projects that are being recommended at this time.
Councilmember Duran?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Exciting projects. This looks fun. My only question is maybe for John. Are those storm drains city property or is that MPS?
Thank you, Councilmember Duran. The storm drains would be City of Moorhead. The utility only controls the water and the electricity.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Councilmember White.
I love both of these projects, but I have to say, I was particularly pleased to see the project for Florence Klingensmith as a mom of an aerospace engineering student who I remember reading to him about her when he was a little boy and first got excited about airplanes. And I'm so pleased that Ace Hardware has agreed to allow the mural to be there. They're already such a great community partner, and it'll have nice visibility. My only wish is that we as a city should tie in more with promoting her as just a distinguished Native. And so I was a little, disappointed that we didn't do something even more, like tie it in with our municipal airport or something, or perhaps on that day, October 28th, we could have that designated as Florence Klingensmith Day in her honor. To recognize her, but I do think that this is it's going to be a great way of illustrating an important Native, but I'd like to see us doing a little bit more to really to highlight that as well.
Councilmember, what did I see first? Gertz.
On the storm drain art proposal, there's about 40 of those block party areas, so you'd be doing approximately 40.
Just 4.
So you're just gonna do 4 for $5,300?
Yep.
Okay.
They have a cost breakdown within their proposal if you're interested in exactly where the money's going to go.
Councilmember Watson Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I first want to say thanks to Kim because she spent a great deal of time reaching out directly to the artists and guiding the ART team through this process, and so really appreciate your leadership on this. I also wanted to make sure that we have a shout out to our donor and say thank you for that, and that if others are interested in donating, so we can continue this process. To piggyback on Councilmember Gertz's comment, the range of I had the privilege of serving on the ART committee, and the range of things that were proposed was really interesting because it was events, public engagement like this one, the static mural, sculptures, things like that too. So people were really thinking creatively, which was challenging for the group, and I think we'll have a stronger process when we do a call for the remainder of the funds, or if there's more that are donated. One thing that came up was like the permanence of things, and is like the 2 that are proposed tonight that varies, but that it was really important about the community engagement and conversation. So Riverkeepers already works with Leanne, and I'm drawing a blank on her last name. Works with the, yes, thank you. And so they were going to work towards a nomination process of an active neighborhood. And then if you think about like a neighborhood club, they have the opportunity to do more than just one great on that block or in that neighborhood. So you can think of it multiplied throughout the community, which is pretty exciting. They're also paying artists as well too, which is really great to see that those funds are going to support that great work. So I think those are all things I really want to say. I'm excited to see these things come to fruition, and yeah, thanks for all that you've done.
Councilmember Gertz.
So just maybe a clarification. Are you saying that with the neighborhood involvement that there could be more?
Within the neighborhood, the conversation that I recall, like on my block, for example, there's 4 drains. So you could potentially paint in one block 4 drains. So it's not just one singular, as they do want to raise the profile and the visibility, but thinking about our water systems too. So not that it'd be more neighborhood associations, but that it would have a larger footprint in one block club, if that makes sense.
Well, I think it's a great idea. I love the idea. It just seems, a little bit rich to me for, $1,150 a drain. If that would be the only thing that I would struggle with.
Councilmember Hendrickson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I might have missed this because I was in the restroom, but who picks out the art design?
For the
For
storm
the
drain,
drains, yeah.
I think the community block club will help develop it in partnership with a professional artist.
Okay.
So they'll be meeting together preliminarily to work on development of the artwork, and then they suggest on a night to unite where there's already maybe the roads blocked off and closed, that's when the block club will come together and actually install the artwork.
Okay, so taking half an hour on 19 night just to talk about the drain.
No, there's a year process,
Your process.
year-long process.
Okay.
It's in the packet, yeah.
On page 102 of your packet, there's an approximate timeline.
Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that. I'll look it up.
And then the page before it is the budget. So it breaks out what they're paying or proposing to pay the artists, the paint, and then the organization and community facilitation.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any questions or comments on this? Councilmember Dahlquist.
Thank you, Mayor. I seem to remember when we first saw this fund, there was another $500 donation to this account, I think. Because I just seem to remember that it kind of like covered the administration fee. Can you look at the earlier, we had a presentation, and I think it was Lisa.
So there was a $25,000, Councilmember Dahlquist, $25,000 donation. There was a $500 foundation fee off of that, and then someone donated the $500 back to bring it up to the original $25,000.
Right, but it's not on this.
It's not in the council packet?
No.
This was just based off of
Oh,
the
okay.
donation that focused on the
Okay.
Moorhead Proud
Well, there's
part.
500
So
more
there's-
in there.
Yes.
The foundation has more, yes.
Councilmember Watson Curry.
Thank you. Just to clarify Councilmember Hendrickson's question too, the pictures on the slide would just be kind of examples of similar projects. So they weren't approved specific art like the mural was.
So it's a collaboration thing. So, okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep.
Any questions or comments for Ms. Zatrowski? Okay. Then is there a motion to approve the resolution?
I second.
Moved by Councilmember Dahlquist, seconded by Councilmember Watson Curry. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Aye. Motion carries. Okay, then we will move to item number 20 on the agenda, which is the commercial no-sort recycling program recommendation presented by Steve Moore.
Thank you again, Mayor, City Council. For about the last year now, we've been going through a commercial no-sort pilot program, and I'm going to give you an update on the process and the results and my recommendations. So this initiative supports Strategic Initiative 2, which is infrastructure, and it's supporting our environmental sustainability and specifically the objective of trying to increase our landfill diversion rate by 5% from the baseline 2017 year. So essentially from 19 to 24%. What does that mean? It means we're taking stuff out of the landfill and sending it elsewhere for reuse, recycling, or repurposing. It's important to look at the overall picture of our overall solid waste picture. This chart shows the last 10 years of municipal solid waste recycling data. So essentially, the full year of 2018, over the last 10 years, we've seen a steady increase of municipal solid waste. Last year, we pushed through almost 35,000 tons of municipal solid waste. That includes garbage, recycling, yard waste, and wood waste. So it's on the rise. Obviously, our population's increasing, so you would generate more waste. That purple band down at the bottom shows when we implemented our residential no-sort recycling, so that really, we really made some improvements there. Red line is total recycled. That includes yard waste, which is the green line. So that's kind of where we're at. It kind of paints the picture when we start talking about the tons of what we recycled in this program as it relates to 35,000 tons. So keep that 35,000 ton number in your head. Okay, our task was to evaluate a commercial no-sort pilot program. And the two questions we wanted to answer is, will it be cost effective? Because let's be honest, recycling is a good thing, but it's also an enterprise and it's a business. And it should be run in a way that we charge a fair price to our customers for the best service. And then the second is, will it improve our diversion rate? And how does that relate to our goal of increasing our diversion rate to 24%? Program length officially in the MPCA's eyes was from October to June. It was actually started in July, but it took a while to get the grant paperwork processed, where we received $32,000 grant to do the program. And it's going to officially end at the end of this month. I extended it from the previous date of 31 May so I could prepare this briefing and recommendation and get all the data crunched. So how did we do? So during, from August to May, you'll see that green line is what we did in the pilot program. 47 businesses participated, and it was pretty consistent between 8 to 12 tons per month for an average 9.8 tons collected from those 47 businesses. I also include what we, as just kind of perspective, what we collect at our drop sites and what we collect curbside residential from our single-family homes and multifamily homes. I think this past month was our record year for residential and apartments at 252 tons. So that's what we collected. And then we went out and took a survey of all the folks who participated. And of those 47 businesses, we received 19 responses to that survey. And one of the questions we asked was, how interested are you in recycling? From 1 to 5, 5 being the highest. Of course, it was overwhelming, and 79%. We're ready to go, right? What if you have to pay for it? Well, then that drops to 58%. And we also included in the survey the proposed pricing structure, so they knew exactly what the price would be for a certain size container so they could recycle. What was interesting is, even though we provided a pricing structure, the answer to the question, there was 32% maybe. Mm-hmm. So after we crunched the data, I looked at operating expenses, potential tipping fees. This is the pricing structure that I developed based on operational costs. And so what does that mean? Without having any reference of what garbage costs, well, a cost scenario would be, let's say a business has a 4 cubic yard container service twice per week. They would pay $101 per month for garbage service. In order to get a recycling, if they wanted to go from a 2 cubic yard garbage container and put a 2 cubic yard recycling container in, the recycling would be $53, their garbage would go down to $87, total is $140. They were paying $101, what it's going to cost them to recycle is about $40 a month. So that's how it would work. The intent would be you would take some of your garbage capacity, reduce that to help offset your recycling costs. Now, a lot of the data from the field is that, especially apartments, that doesn't necessarily work. You put a smaller container, and the smaller container then tends to overflow because of participation rates and education and awareness. Okay, but the pricing structure, I met with a local provider of recycling service, and I said, hey, I'm thinking about implementing this citywide. What do you think of my pricing structure? And she says, go ahead and implement. Well, that told me that obviously we're going to be priced higher than the competitive market. So that was very important feedback, because the objective is to provide recycling service at the best cost to our customers. So that might mean it might not be me, and maybe it's the way it's working now is the best option for them. So now, you take that data, and now I tried to make some assumptions and project out what an implementation of a citywide program might mean as far as diversion rates and tonnage. So bear with me, I'll try to go as quickly as possible. I know it's late. So we had 47 businesses in the pilot program. Average we collected was 410 pounds per month per business. So that's the factor that I'm gonna use as potential if you extrapolate the data out. So I'm gonna assume that any new customer I bring on board is gonna bring about 410 pounds per month. And then based on 610 commercial accounts, these are the number of businesses if we got this participation. So if there's 20% participation, we would expect 122 businesses to sign up. And what does that mean? 122 businesses at 0.205 tons per month, that means we have potential to generate an extra 25 tons per month in recycling. So that's moving up the participation, it moves up potential tonnage. But one of the main assumptions here is we're gonna assume that since we implemented the pilot program, there has been a commercial entity offering commercial no-sort recycling as well at the same time, okay? So what does that mean? Well, now that there's a commercial option for it as well, we've seen commercial tonnages increase over the period of the pilot program already. So I'm gonna assume that the increases that have already occurred will not be new customers if I implement this program, okay? I'll expand on that a little bit more. So when you look at 2019 totals between August and December, that I've removed the no-sort commercial collected by the commercial entity. So we're averaging 45 tons a month. But the first 5 months when I added the commercial no-sort numbers in, we've seen an increase to 71 tons a month, which I presume which means about a 52% increase in commercial activity. Okay, this has nothing to do with the pilot program. This is just an increase in commercial activity based on increased services offered by the commercial sector. That's a 26-ton average. So when I take my assumptions to do my projections, I'm gonna say, well, in all reality, I'm probably gonna get about a 20 to 40% participation rate. That's based on other markets and other locations. So if I get these 20, 30, 40% participation at that 0.2 tons per business, we're looking at anywhere between 25 tons and a 50-ton increase. But we have to take into consideration the increase of that 26 tons that's already occurred. So when you put that in there and you subtract it out, if we only get a 20% participation rate, I'm assuming that we've already seen that participation rate increase through the commercial sector. So you're gonna really project zero increase. 30%, maybe you get 11 tons. And again, these are all projected numbers and based on those assumptions. But the important thing to note is that out of all the Moorhead businesses, and this is from my discussions with Minn Kota, 537 businesses accounts already participate in some level of recycling activity. That's either office paper, could just be office paper, just cardboard, bits and pieces, or it could be the new commercial no-sort collected. But basically, since almost over the last year, we've collected 1,624 tons of commercial recycling in the city of Moorhead. That's not collected by the city, it's collected by the commercial sector already. So keep that in mind. I know this is a lot of numbers, but I'm trying to paint a picture and I'm trying to project how much, if we implemented this program as a city, what that payoff would be as far as recycling rates and diversion rates. So if we take all the assumptions into consideration, if 40% participate, we're gonna look at a 4.2% increase in recycling. And what does that mean to the diversion rate? Well, using that 35,000 tons of municipal solid waste, if we only increase 24 tons a month, that's a 0.84% increase in our diversion rate. Is that gonna be worth investing in a new program as far as our goal to increase our diversion rate? And honestly, I use that 20 to 40%, but based on the data that we have on what we're collecting in commercial tonnage now, I would gather it would be more at the 20 to 30% range, not that high 40% range. Okay, so with all that data, my recommendation, and I've worked this for a long, long time, not with the intent of having this recommendation, quite honestly. I thought there would be a lot more recycling to capture on the commercial sector and by implementing a no-sort program, but there's a lot of recycling being collected already. Why not? Cost to implement. I'm going to have to probably depend on take rate and participation rate. I'm going to need an FTE and probably another rear loader. So FTE sanitation, $65,000 with benefits. Sanitation rear loader, $175,000. So, and I'll also need $800 dumpsters to implement. So if I get 100 businesses, that's 80 grand. Right now, my reserve account for sanitation is about $1 million, which is probably a little less than that 25% comfort level that we have right now that we want out of our enterprise funds, because we're looking at about a $4.5 million enterprise for sanitation. And I should have more than $1 million in the bank. Cost of service, we're going to be higher. So I'm not sure how much more business I'm going to generate by implementing this program. Impact to the diversion rate, it's limited. You saw the numbers in the chart, anywhere from 0% to 0.84% best case scenario, in my opinion. Lack of program management. During this pilot program, I went through three interns / seasonal employees managing this program. I am now managing this program from my desk. And I'm also managing the apartment recycling program, which I'll talk about here. We already have a viable, cost-effective option. I confirmed with the private provider that they plan to continue their no-sort service, and they would continue to partner with the city of Moorhead on how we implement and educate and continue to increase recycling rates. But the good news is, just through this effort, we've seen a pretty good increase in commercial recycling, as you can see. And then I feel there's still the greater target audience is our multifamily housing. And I've spent some time in the dumpsters, so to speak, over the last month, working with customers that are frustrated. I pulled recycling dumpsters out because we just can't get the education and awareness and get everybody on board. But we're collecting 12% of our total tonnage is coming from the apartments, and our goal should be about 20 tons per apartment. So we're averaging 12. If we go up to 20%, a third of our population, we're only collecting, a third of our households, we're only collecting 12% total tonnage. If we increase that to 20%, that equates to 25 tons per month, which is a 4.4% increase in recycling and almost a 1% increase in our diversion rate. So my recommendation is to focus, not implement commercial no-sort recycling, and focus on increasing our participation in our multifamily housing. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Moore? Councilmember White?
Well, I think what I take away from this is that the program as we piloted it's duplicative, and we're not able to compete with private industry, in which case we shouldn't, if there's a better viable option, then we shouldn't. But I'm glad you brought up the issue of the multifamily housing, and even just I'd want you to expand on that a little bit of where do you see, are there other places where maybe there's a need that's still unmet? Because I think that's clearly one of them. The one that I heard a lot about also is at just more of a selected, like I work at a large university, and there's and then that's, there's places like that that have kind of struggled to increase their, the volume of recycling that they do. And so might there be, not an either or, but just, looking at those places where there's still unmet need and seeing where we could serve a role.
And that in the commercial provider, Minn Kota, does provide some services, and they are working with the universities. So in essence, when we did start our pilot program, a lot of those participants that jumped on board with our no-sort pilot program were already current Minn Kota customers. Mm-hmm. So, those numbers that we collected, 9.8 tons per month, may not even have been an increase, because we just directly pulled most of those customers because they wanted a no-sort option. And now that Minn Kota provides a no-sort option, And it'll be a no-sort light because if cardboard exceeds 50% of their total recycling volume, they're going to still require that to be separated because that's still a good priced commodity. OCC is still a good commodity on the market. So there's some nuances there, but that's all partnership and education with customers, with teaming with Minn Kota.
Councilmember Gertz.
Steve, I really appreciate the detail that you've gone through. I know that you have a passion to do your job thoroughly, and, you know, this study shows that because obviously your goal was to increase the recycling, and the numbers don't prove that it's a viable service. So you approach the whole study with a goal to increase, recycling for the city of Moorhead, and you found out that it doesn't make sense. So I appreciate the fact that you'd go through that effort and come to a result that is best for the city. And I think you do that generally every day in your job. So thank you for service.
Thank you.
Councilmember Watson Curry, I think you had your hand up.
Yes, I did. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Steve. I feel sad to move forward with your recommendation. I know already has been said. Assuming that we go forward with the recommendation to not continue, I just wanted to verify that if businesses contact the city, that will connect them to the proper contacts so they can recycle.
Yes.
Okay. And I also just wanted to tease out your comment. We've had presentations from some of your past interns and really fabulous staff. And of course, they do phenomenal work, but they're looking for something full time. So it's been kind of tragic to lose some of their energy as well, too. So I would agree that targeting the multifamily units would have more bang for our buck, but it can't be shouldered by you as well, too. So just wanted to hit that again and make sure that everyone heard that we still have a need for that to move forward on not only increasing our recycling and diversion, but some of our other efforts with the Green Step Cities initiative. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you. And we are looking at that holistically and as far as manpower requirements across the board for the city. So appreciate that.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Moore before we move forward? Okay, seeing none, thank you again for all your work.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for your time.
Is there a motion before us to accept Mr. Moore's recommendation?
I motion that.
Okay, motion made to accept Mr. Moore's recommendation regarding the commercial no-sort recycling program made by Councilmember Watson Curry, seconded by Councilmember Dahlquist.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, we did not put a resolution in front of you today. Just because if we do nothing, then there's nothing to do.
Oh,
fair enough.
Fair enough.
So it was a pilot program, so sorry.
Oh, no worries.
You good?
Move on.
Okay, thanks.
It was this to item number 22, 2018 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report and Audit Presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Tonight we're here to review the results of our 2018 audit and to present the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, also known as the CAFR. Here to present, after we present the audit was performed by Ide Bailey, and following the presentation, the executive summary, we would like to request the approval of resolution to accept and file the CAFR. So that will be after the presentation. And here to present tonight is Derek Flanagan, partner of Ide Bailey. The executive summary should be in front of you on your desks in a bound format. And if anybody needs one, please let me know. I have extra copies. Okay. With that being said, here's Derek.
All right, thank you. Mayor Judd and members of the council, thanks for having me here today. My plan is to walk through this executive summary that you have in front of you. It's approximately 14 pages in length, And I'm going to go through it page by page and just kind of walk through it with you. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. We can do it as I'm going through it or at the end or whatever's preferable to you. Otherwise, I'm just going to start from the top here on page 1. The purpose of this executive summary, this actually is not a document that is required by accounting standards. It's something that we have created to try to help facilitate this presentation to you based on the CAFR. The CAFR is almost 200 pages in length, so you don't want to go through that. That would be very time consuming, and we would be scattering all over the place within that CAFR. So we created this to hopefully help guide this presentation and give you some historical information. It gives us that flexibility to include 5 years of information, whereas the CAFR is a singular year. And with that being said, if you have feedback on this document, if there's things you'd like to see or have removed, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. It's meant for you, so if you'd like to see changes made, we would welcome that feedback. So you have hired us to come in and perform your financial statement audit for the year ended December 31, 2018. Our responsibility is to express an opinion on the financial statements, or CAFR. The CAFR is actually yours. We come in and then express an opinion on that CAFR. That opinion for the current year was a clean audit opinion, an unmodified opinion. So that's the opinion you want, and that is the opinion you received. In the current year, you also had an audit of federal awards. Anytime that a governmental agency expends over $750,000 in federal awards, it triggers a separate federal audit with compliance aspects to that audit. And along the same lines, we expressed an opinion on your federal awards. Our opinion was an unmodified opinion relative to the federal awards. So that's the opinion you would want for that, as well, a clean opinion on the federal awards. In terms of findings, there were no federal findings. There was one reportable condition within the financial statement audit, and we do have some pages that are dedicated to that to help walk you through that. And that was just related to some fixed assets that were more appropriately reclassified to a couple of your proprietary funds. And so you'll see that on one of the end pages within this executive summary, but that was something that management identified in the current year, and that was a significant change that was made, and thus we have a responsibility to make you aware of that. So now getting into the numbers. Page 2 of this executive summary, the cash and investments for both the general fund and your special revenue funds. So at the top there, you can see the cash and investment position for 5 years presented within your general fund, and you can see the trend analysis that entails. And then there are 6 special revenue funds presented at the bottom of the page with the same format where you can see 5 years of information, just so you can see just how much cash and investments are within each of those funds. So nothing earth-shattering there, but information for you based on those funds. Page 3 is the liquidity ratio. What the liquidity ratio is, in short, is the ability to pay your bills as they come due. And so if you think of it in this fashion, a ratio of 1 would mean that you have $1 of available cash for every $1 of bills that are due within 1 year. That ratio you can see there for 2018, 2.8 for the governmental activities, and then 2.6 for the city as a whole. So not in any danger of running up against that kind of 1 threshold that you want to make sure you're above. The next page, page 4, has a lot of numbers on it, a lot of information. I'm going to focus on the far right 2 columns, which is, this page is your budget to actual results, and the far right 2 columns is, the third column is your actual results for the general fund, and then the far right is the variance that the actual results were compared to your final budget. Your actual revenues for the year ended December 31, 2018 were $17,129,829. That actually was a 0.3% negative variance compared to your final budget. When I say negative on the revenue side, I mean that you did not receive as much revenues as you had anticipated with that final budget. Expenditures were $25,326,559. And that was actually a 3.1% positive variance on the expenditures, When I say positive with expenditures, I mean that you did not spend as much as you had anticipated with your final budget. You had other financing sources, transfers in of $8,451,246, and that led to a change in your fund balance within the general fund of $254,516 positive. Your fund balance at the end of the year is at the bottom of the page. In total, $19,530,668, and we will actually analyze that fund balance on pages 8 and 9. So a lot of information on this page, but it's useful information, I think, to show your actual results compared to what you had anticipated with your budget. Page 5. Page 5, 6, and 7 are all in the same format. The top is line graph format, 5 years of information for each of the categories. The middle of the page will give you the numbers, so you can see those numbers for the 5 years, and then the bottom is the current year in pie chart format. This first page is general fund revenues, and you can see the 5 years of information for each of your general fund revenue categories and see the trends therein. Page 6 changes to expenditures, so same format, 5 years of information, current year percentage to the total pie chart format at the bottom. Page 7 is your general fund expenditures, this time by type, so a little different way of looking at the general fund expenditures, this time by type, and you can see 4 categories within that type category and in the same format as the previous 2 pages. I had previously mentioned that I would do some further analysis on your fund balance, and that begins on page 8. Page 8 and page 9 go together. Page 8 just has some dialogue on your fund balance. And in the middle of the page, we actually do have 2 benchmarks that we found through our research. So you can read through those. You guys actually have a fund balance policy that you have enacted yourselves where the city will strive to maintain at least 60% and will take action if it is projected to drop below 40%. So let's turn to page 9 to see where those figures are at. For 2018, that fund balance, and this percentage is your unrestricted fund balance as of December 31st. So that is the sum of your committed, assigned, and unassigned. And it divides it by the amount of expenditures for the general fund to come up with that percentage. It was 60.9%, so right at where you've strived to be with your fund balance policy. You can see at the bottom of the page, it lists out what that number is in terms of unrestricted fund balance. So you can see the dollar amount that equates to. Also, if you were to calculate this in another fashion, that 60.9% is 7.3 months of expenditures that you have within your fund balance. So equating it more into kind of a time frame, if you look at based on how much you spent in 2018 in terms of expenditures, you have 7.3 months of expenditures within that fund balance category. Page 10, we have your general fund operating expenditures per capita. So we take your operating expenditures for each of the 5 years presented and divide it by the population to come up with a dollar amount. You can see for 2018, that dollar amount, $511. And really with this one, when we're performing this analysis, we're really just looking to see if there are any outliers or if there's any warning trends of it spiking way up. And you can see for the 5 years presented here that it's pretty consistent over that 5 years, and there's no large swings or no large increases that we would need to look into further. Page 11 is some information on the Moorhead Public Service Funds. This was presented to their commission on June 18th, so just last week. However, I still wanted to present one page with their results, and you can see this format that we start on this page will follow on the next 3 or 4 pages. So I'll set the stage that operating revenues are at the top, And then the operating expenses below there, the difference is, of course, going to be your operating income and/or loss, depending on. And then also the net transfers in or out, depending on which fund it is the last item there listed. So within your proprietary funds, the other city utility funds, the 5 years of information for the wastewater treatment, and this is the sum of all of those funds. The wastewater treatment, stormwater, sanitation, pest control, forestry, and street light utility funds is presented here on page 12. And I had mentioned that there were certain fixed assets that were reclassified to proprietary funds, and that was really the largest reason for the increase in operating expenses that you see here, is because those fixed assets had depreciation expense in the current year. And so we pulled out those two specific funds on the next page, the wastewater treatment and the stormwater operations, to show you the impact on those funds of the increased depreciation expense specific to those capital assets that were reclassified. And so that's why those two funds both show individually on this page an increase in operating expenses. Now, that's not a cash item, that's a non-cash item, so it doesn't impact your cash flow or anything like that, but fixed assets eventually have to be repaired and fixed or replaced, and so you always got to be cognizant of that as well. And then I have one more page, which is all the remaining proprietary funds, the golf course, sports center, and municipal airport, following the same format as previous pages. The difference here is that the expenses are on the top because they have more operating expenses than revenues, and the operating loss for those funds then being at the bottom and the transfers in above that. And then at the bottom of the page, we added some information on airport because we're looking at operating income and loss. There are stuff below operations of funds that come in terms of capital contributions and transfers. So we're showing you what the total change in that fund was for the 5 years presented for the airport, and that's at the bottom of the page. And that is the last page. So I would open it up to questions.
Sorry, Councilmember White.
One question on page 10, the operating expense per capita, what did we use for our population numbers? I know it's kind of an issue in Moorhead of, we've had population growth, plus we picked up Oakport, but that's not necessarily reflected in the official population number.
Yeah, so the number I used was 43,440, and I pulled it from the Minnesota State Demographic Center website.
Our city manager, is that a good reflection of where we are? Because I just wondered, we see there's that slight uptick in the per capita expense, but I wondered to what extent is it perhaps that we're, that it's a product of a slightly less accurate number? Because if we are larger than that, we'd...
In comparing the general fund expenditures in 18 to 17, there was a slight increase in expenditures as well. So, how much, how accurate is that population? It's always lagging behind, right? Because you don't have the most accurate information as of right now. And we'll get a better reflection here with the census, but we're just using the best information that's available to us at that time, so.
Councilmember White, Derek, thank you. We did discuss this in our preparation for this meeting, and he's right, the population estimates are always so far behind, and they're based on, they always take it from one consistent place, so every year's report over and over is consistent, whether it's high or low, and obviously it's low, so we'll have much better numbers with the 2020 census.
Councilmember Paulson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had two observations. One was with the MPS fund. It looks like between 16 and 17, there was a pretty dramatic increase in operating income. And so I don't know, it seems pretty stark. I don't know if there's a reason for that?
I believe there was a rate increase.
Okay. And then when I look at our operating income for our funds, it looks like they've all kind of trended down a little bit. Is there a reason for that?
Because we haven't increased fees proportionate to the same way
Okay,
We,
excellent.
you say
they have.
We have not.
We have not.
Yeah.
So I think those are important observations that the data is telling us here, just to make awareness to the council. You know, if you look at operating income is profitability of whatever enterprise you're undertaking. So between 16 and 17, MPS had a very drastic increase in profit. And you can see the transfers out are obviously the transfers to the city of Moorhead. And then you can see that our fees have not been keeping up with expenses, and our operating income is down in our funds. So, just wanted to make aware. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Flanagan?
Could I make one comment before I finish up? Obviously, you know, we had a transition in the current year with the finance director role, and so I just want to thank the city staff and everyone involved, because anytime there's a transition, that's, you know, you don't have that historical information to go off of, and we're learning, you know, she was learning our processes, and, you know, there's a whole learning curve there, and for us to be here presenting to you today and timely like this is just a testament to not only her, but also all of her staff that work with her to get through all the requests that we have and all the questions and document requests that we have to be here and be done with the audit is a testament to them, so I want to thank them for that.
And I should recognize, and I do apologize, Carla McCall, who introduced Mr. Flanagan as our city finance director, for those at home. So thank you for your work as well, Ms. McCall, on this as well. Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Dahlquist.
Thank you, Mayor. I tried to read as much as I could because I thought Carla wrote this and she did all that work. So I tried to read as much as I could, but then I got to the numbers. But I think you did a great job, especially in that intro and describing what the city of Moorhead is. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Duran.
I would move approval of the resolution to receive the CAFR.
Second.
Second.
There's a motion to approve the resolution to receive the City of Moorhead 2018 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, also known as CAFR. That also was seconded by Councilmember.
Councilmember Paulson can have it.
Well, I heard you first.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Let me fair here. So, Councilmember Watson Curry, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you very much. That takes us to agenda item number 24, discussion regarding Ward 4 City Council seat vacancy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Included within the packet for the city council is a brief memo that I had prepared regarding the matter, including my recommendation to have the seat be subject to the upcoming special election for the school bond issue. It is, of course, a council decision if you want to go ahead and just appoint somebody rather than follow the special election process. However, that was my recommendation, since it's so close to the special election for the school bond, to go with that procedure. The next step, if the council wants to go ahead and authorize us to do that, we'd put together a timeline along with all applicable notices and provide an update to the council in that process, and I'd work closely with the city clerk and the city manager. But it's ultimately a city council decision how you'd like to proceed.
Is there any discussion regarding Mr. City Attorney Shockley's recommendation? Councilmember Duran?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would agree that, well, I would agree with the statement that we should allow the voters to decide who would be the next Ward 4 council member. that's where I stand on that issue.
Any further, Councilmember Carlson? I'll say hand go up. No?
I was just going to actually move to declare that a vacancy exists in Ward 4 seat as of August 15th, 2019, and that the successor will be chosen by special election to be held in conjunction with the citywide Moorhead School Building Bond referendum, and that city staff shall take all necessary action to schedule and undertake said special election.
Second that. Well said. Oh, sorry.
No, I just said, well said.
Okay, so I won't repeat all of that, but that is the motion.
It's in
I'm
there.
sure I'll leave it to
It's in
Madam
there.
City Clerk
It's in
to clarify that, and that has been seconded by.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead, Councilmember Dahlquist.
I was just going to ask Mr. Shockley about, we have a budget for a special election, correct? I mean, didn't I see something like we have 25,000 for the election?
So Councilmember Dahlquist, if I can answer that. We started last year to put money in every year to start preparing so we have enough money when there is an election. Previously, every other year, our budget went up and down, up and down. So we only had 1 year of half of that, so no, but we have never yet, but we're putting money in every year. So we have a little bit towards it, where we've never had any towards it, except in the year that we budget for it. If that makes sense. We're only 1 year into the plan, so it's an added expense we didn't expect, but we are 25,000 ahead of what we had last year, so.
Does that clarify? Oh, okay. So motion's been made by Councilmember Carlson, seconded by Councilmember Watson Curry. All in favor of said motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item agenda number 25 is to consider the joint powers agreement between Clay County and the city of Moorhead for land acquisition. I'm assuming that's going to be City Attorney Shockley who will introduce that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Recognizing the time, the agreement hasn't changed from the agreement that was submitted at last city council meeting, at which time I presented my presentation or slideshow regarding the agreement. We put together kind of some brief bullet points regarding the overall agreement. I think the takeaways are there's no cost to the city of Moorhead for adopting the agreement. Clay County is going to be responsible for the meeting location. They're going to be serving as the fiscal agent. And this agreement is really about creating a negotiations team that will allow voluntary land acquisitions so that the city, along with the county and Buffalo Red Watershed District, will have some input into the costs that are paid for the land. There is one direct benefit in some of the city manager and my discussions. One person brought up that there is some benefit in that we'll have a better understanding of what purchase prices are being paid for land outside of the city for flood control, so that they're not, way out of proportion driving up our costs. And I can answer any questions, but the agreement, I believe, is in your packet, as is our city council communications.
Any questions or comments relating to the joint powers agreement? Mr. Shockley? Okay, seeing none, and that's not here because the last one I got caught up on, so just by reading, you want us to make a motion on this one, okay? I just want to make sure.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Okay, the motion has been made to approve the joint powers agreement between Clay County and the city of Moorhead for land acquisition, made by Councilmember Paulson, seconded by Councilmember White. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion carries. Move to number 26, Mayor and Council reports. Is there any reports that council member would like to make? Councilmember Paul or Carlson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a brief report on the Lake Agassiz Regional Library Board that met last week. They put their budget together, and it will, I believe it has been forwarded to the city. They will be asking for a slight increase to help cover salary increases and insurance costs for employees.
Thank you for your report. Any other council reports? Councilmember White?
I wanted to bring to your attention some of the issues that we were discussing at our recent Human Rights Commission meeting. As many of you are probably aware, at the end of May, there was a hit-and-run incident where a female resident of Moorhead was very seriously injured. And Connie Adon, one of our commissioners, brought it to attention that there was a lot of concerns and questions among, in particular, some of our new American residents. And so I was really pleased that Chief Monroe came to our meeting, and we had an extensive discussion about the status of the investigation right now, what people can do if they have questions about it. And I believe that he's working to do some outreach with the community too, to answer any questions they have, but also just wanted to make sure that we had this on people's radar still, that this is still an active investigation, and they're trying to see if anybody has any information at all, if you hear anybody talking about this, or just helping get the word out, because the police would really appreciate any assistance that they can to try to find out who is the person driving that injured this resident.
Thank you for sharing that, Councilmember White. Are there any other reports? Okay, I'll be brief with mine. I just wanted to do a quick recognition. I did attend the State of the Arts ceremony in Berry Hall at India Shoes downtown campus, along with Councilmember Carlson. Just so the public is aware, we do award money for entities in our community that make a significant contribution to the arts. There were some award winners there who are doing great work in our city and in our region. So that was a really good event. Also attended the Block E open house. Again, a great asset to our city and our downtown revitalization plans. Also, big thank you to those in the Fargo-Moorhead Chamber that showed up to host that event. Also attended the Longest Table event, which was in Dilworth. We had some Dilworth and the Moorhead residents in attendance there. Also, Councilmember White, I want to make sure I catch everybody who was there. Councilmember Watson Curry, Councilmember Dahlquist,
And Carlson.
and Carlson, sorry. Hey, he's getting a little late, so my apologies. I don't want to miss anybody. We're also in attendance. Good conversation with some good Minnesota folks talking about, all things Minnesota and how to make our community stronger and better. Also attended the Homeownership Press Conference out in West Fargo regarding a Habitat for Humanity home. It was a national, I believe it was Home Ownership Day, if I'm not mistaken. But attended a press conference that was attended by West Fargo and Fargo folks as well, celebrating homeownership and also talking about affordable housing and how we can increase that in our region. And I think everybody's probably knows that I got dunked
Yes.
Saturday by someone's child, who was a very accurate throw at the American Legion Melvin E. Hurl 100-year celebration, celebrating the American Legion and their existence and the work that they're doing to advocate for veterans and rights, also making significant contributions in our community as well to make our community a better, stronger place to live.
Mr. Mayor, I believe you also got dunked by your own child.
I did, yes. One of them, yes, I did. Yeah, I think I went down, I got dunked about 10 to 12 times, which, as you can see, pulling myself out of water when wet clothes was, a pretty good workout. So, but it was for a great cause. So, thank you for the American Legion and what they do in our community. Any other reports for the good of the order before we move to adjourn, other than city manager I don't want to forget your report. You always have a report, so.
I try, I will be brief. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. City Council, I wanted to report at the Charter Commission last week. They did take up the issue again, I think it was the third time, for consideration to change the charter for allow the council the decision whether they want to become chamber members. They did end up passing that on to you. It will come July 8th. They changed the language a little bit, not only they propose to you not only that you can decide to belong to the local chamber of commerce, but also to any other private organizations. Is that?
And it'll actually be the second meeting in July.
Second meeting in July, sorry, not July 8th.
Yeah, you have to schedule a public hearing.
Okay, we need a public hearing. Okay, anyway, so that is coming to you. Sorry, I got that wrong a little bit. That charter change will be coming to you about the chamber, okay, in July. So be thinking about that. Thanks.
Right, and seeing there is no executive session, is there any new business? Seeing none, any citizens that want to address the council? Seeing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Madam Clerk,
Someone can comment.
we'll give it a, Councilmember Watson Curry. Second by Councilmember Carlson. And we're adjourned. Good night, Moorhead. 8:29, 8:30 PM.